Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, March 18th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, freelance journalist and author of Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 Other Myths on why mass incarceration not the answer to AAPI hate. Also on the program, Jules Evans, philosopher, author of Philosophy for Life, Art of Losing Control, and other books on conspirituality, where wellness meets conspiracy theory, and the fascinating intersection of wellness and QAnon. Also on the program today, the Judiciary Committee holds anti-Asian violence hearings. Europe confronting a fourth wave while their vaccination pace has stalled. In this country, the IRS pushes the tax deadline back 1 month. Sanders and Warren reveal a bill to tax CEO pay. Postal Service finds no evidence of mail ballot fraud in Pennsylvania. Can you imagine? Meanwhile, Ohio sues over COVID relief bill that prohibits Ohio and its funds to support tax cuts. California recall secures 2.1 million signatures. It will go forward. And the House reauthorizes the Violence Against Women Act. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. With me, as always, today is Emma Vigeland. Emma, how are you?
I'm doing well today. Actually well.
Actually well.
Well, I'll stop lying to the audience. If I'll let you guys know if I'm in a bad mood. But as I've said, as I've said, though, whenever the show starts, any stresses I have outside of this, I get distracted and I get into the show, so they largely go away. My job improves my mood. I hope you're happy to hear that, Sam.
I am very happy to hear it. I am a little upset that you've been lying to us for so long.
we have a radical honesty policy in the opening.
I'm sorry. If it gives you comfort, I'm probably only saying I'm doing well and I'm not in the best mood maybe like 20% of the time.
That's a lot of time.
You don't have
20%?
one bad day.
That's once a week.
Oh no, I have bad days. I'm exhausted right now, but my point is I'm honest about it.
Okay, so how are you doing, Sam?
I'm tired.
Okay. I'm
tired. But spring is getting closer. It's getting closer.
Yeah.
It's getting closer. So by now I imagine many people have caught up with the horrible shooting in Atlanta, and the police officer who had characterized this shooter's his day. He had characterized, I guess, the shooter's mind, the state of mind before going and shooting 8 people is he was having a bad day. And then it turns up that the cop's Facebook had pictures of racist shirts that they were selling. About
Are they selling them on bad days?
On COVID. Yeah, I guess any day, really.
Yeah, it said, COVID-19 created in China. I don't even get the joke.
I think part of it is like it's the way that Trump pronounces it. Maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. But Yesterday, or I guess this morning, I should say, there is a House hearing on violence and discrimination against Asian Americans. This has been, we have had in New York City alone a 1,900% increase year over year in some type of Asian hate crime or attack or reports by Asian folk of being attacked in some manner. There have been approximately 3,800 assaults on Asian people around the country. Almost 1,000 of those coming in the past couple of months. 2,800 from March until December. And
I'm sure the president's rhetoric on China, the China virus, Kung flu, I'm sure that has nothing to do with that.
I mean, and of course, I mean, you're obviously being sarcastic, and it does. And there's also been, I mean, let's face it, there's also been there's a long historical precedent, both societal and in terms of institutional and governmental by this country of Asian racism. And here is Chip Roy, however, maybe slightly missing the point about, meeting violence with violence.
The victims of race-based violence and their families deserve justice. And as the case, what we're talking about here with the tragedy, what we just saw occur in Atlanta, Georgia. I would also suggest that the victims of cartels moving illegal aliens deserve justice. The American citizens in South Texas that are getting absolutely decimated by what's happening on our southern border deserve justice. The victims of rioting and looting in the streets last week, businesses closed, burned last summer, deserve justice. We believe in justice, right? There's old sayings in Texas about, find all the rope in Texas and get a tall oak tree. We take justice very seriously, and we ought to do that. Round up the bad guys. That's what we believe. My concern about this hearing is that it seems to want to venture into the policing of rhetoric in a free society, free speech, and away from the rule of law and taking out bad guys.
Taking out bad guys. So that was a folksy interpretation of lynchings. That's what he's defining as justice. And basically trying to use some Texas saying that's completely soaked in institutional racism and blood of killing innocent Black people throughout our country historically, in order to complete his long list of whataboutisms that he used to downplay the murder of 8 people, including 6 Asian women in the Atlanta area by this young murderer. Like, that was just a string of atrocities in what he said right there.
And on top of which, he's basically saying, we don't want to get into any type of cancel culture. Let's just hang the people we need to hang and make sure that we don't in any way get into some type of cancel culture, politically
It was a missed
incorrect.
opportunity.
Yeah.
He didn't say cancel culture, did he? Right?
I mean, he's implying it, right?
Right,
that's what he's saying.
But he could
I don't want to chill free speech by getting into, rhetoric.
He could have completed the trifecta or the entire mosaic of Republican awfulness by hitting on the cancel culture point. Again, missed opportunity.
I contend he did bring it up. He didn't say the words cancel culture, but that's what he's talking about. We don't want to impinge upon free speech. And he's like, he doesn't. I mean, when he's saying, I don't want to get this into rhetoric, what he is specifically saying is pay no attention to the way that COVID-19 was framed by the president of the United States and the impact that has had. This is just a coincidence that's going on, I guess, according to him. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Victoria Law, freelance journalist, author of Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration. We'll be right back after this. Tough day to just to hear that video and go into
Yeah,
an ad, but
there's no way to make that
no, that
transition.
transition's not
Yeah.
not super easy. But I gotta say, you know, I was excited to talk about this before. Now, not so much. But you guys know I have been for the past couple of years on a dental hygiene kick. Got into Quip, became a sponsor of this program, and around that same time, I brush obviously on a regular basis. I floss now probably more than I ever have at any stage in my life, more consistently. And now I'm also chewing gum as a way to maintain my dental health. Yes, gum is an unsung hero
I didn't know this.
in your dental care. Well, you did know this probably. I mean, we used to hear some ads about it back in the day. And the point is, like, you have sugarless gum and you chew it after you eat, you're cleaning your teeth in some manner.
Are you gaslighting me? I did not know that.
The ADA recommends chewing sugar-free gum for 20 minutes after meals.
Oh, well,
now,
good to know.
But here's the thing. And now I know this is going to seem awkward and weird, but I recently was driving somewhere and started to think about Quip. This is not a lie. And I realized, like, look, the bottom line about dental care is you got to do it. You got to brush your teeth. You got to floss. How do you get yourself to get into that habit? Not easy, right? Chew gum. How do you get? Quip they're not a toothbrush company. They're a design firm that designs products that makes it easier for you to take care of your teeth. Because I've talked about how much I love the disposable flosser they have, and I do. And the gum thing, I don't know if I have it on me. All right, yeah, so they have a new gum dispenser. It is like Pez. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but the gum is not. But it's shoots right into your mouth like that. I can't chew gum during the show, but it's awesome. My kids love it. It's super easy. You carry it around, you put it in your pocket. Your gum does not get full of lint, like has happened to me in the past. Quip gum can help prevent cavities. Obviously, freshen your breath when chewed for 20 minutes after eating, like the ADA says. Sugar-free, has tooth-friendly xylitol, 0 calories. And it has a long-lasting mint flavor with a crunchy tri-layer design. It's great gum. Pair Quip gum with their electric toothbrushes, their refillable floss, particularly the flosser. It's an amazing product. Quip delivers fresh brush heads, floss, and toothpaste refills every 3 months for $5. Shipping is free, so you save money and skip the store. And if you go to go to getquip.com/majority right now, you can get a free plastic dispenser for your gum with any refill plan. That's free dispenser at getquip.com/majority. Spelled GETQUIP.com/majority. Quip, the good habits company. I guess that's another way of saying what I said, but I don't know. All right. Want to welcome to the program Victoria Law. She is a freelance journalist, author of Prison Makes Us Safe and 20 Other Myths, which is coming out in the first week of April. So I haven't had a chance to read it yet, Victoria, but I wanted to talk about that and also sort of, I think we saw it exhibited in this clip that we just played, this notion of like the way that we deal with this stuff is to hang people. And I don't know if he was being literal, but just give me your first impressions with that. And first off, welcome to the program. I'm here obviously with Emma Vigeland.
Thanks so much for having me, Sam and Emma. I think that we live in a country which is very punitive, and we think about we think about policing and incarceration as our only way to get justice or retribution, but we don't actually think about what we can do to prevent violence like this from happening. I am sure that if people who have experienced harm and violence were to be asked, would you rather see the person who committed that harm and violence be hung, go to jail forever, have their liberty stripped away? Or would you rather that never have happened to you? I believe almost everyone would say, I would rather not have experienced that kind of violence or that kind of harm in the first place.
And so what, I mean, and on some level, he basically said the opposite, right? I mean, he said, what we should be doing is hanging these people after the fact, and in no way addressing maybe the context in which created this this hatred. I mean, some of it, I guess, and so give me a sense of like what would you suggest, or what do you think is the way to get to a place where this doesn't happen, or certainly doesn't happen with the frequency and the intensity that it's been happening? Well, I want to say this past year, obviously, but even prior to that.
Yes, I mean it's a very good question, because I mean, we have a system in place that incarcerates 2.2 million people, many of whom, have committed harm and violence. And obviously this has not stopped other people from going on to attack people. We have seen a huge rise in attacks against Asians and Asian Americans this past year because of the racist rhetoric that has been allowed to flourish. So I think part of that is giant public campaigns, not just from people at the top. So we have Joe Biden saying, please don't attack Asians, which is a huge shift and departure from what his predecessor was saying. But it also has to come from people in the communities and local leaders that say, don't attack Asians. They are not the cause of this ongoing pandemic, this never-ending lockdown. So it is partially combating all of this misinformation. And at the same time, we also have to look at other other factors as well. So why is there this rise in violence? People are feeling frustrated about this never-ending pandemic. People are seeing their economic opportunities, which for some people were not great to begin with, dwindle down, and they're punching at targets that they feel are the people responsible, but they're not punching up. They're not punching, say, the mayor for failing to provide more job services. They're not punching the governor for, they're not punching their local, their senator or their assembly person for not passing a bigger stimulus bill. You take it out on the people that are closest to you, which I think is also something that needs to be addressed. Is that why is it that we feel that we take things out on people who are more vulnerable? I mean, when we look at the reports of violence against Asians and Asian Americans, 2/3 were against women, because people thought that they are easier targets than, say, going to a person who is male or somebody who is bigger or somebody who looks more able to defend themselves.
And a significant portion of that other 1/3 is elderly.
Yes.
Males.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's clearly, I mean, they're clearly targeting people that they perceive as more vulnerable. And there is, we have had, and you pointed out on Twitter, I noticed the other day, you pointed to a thread by a sociologist. Her name escapes me.
Tamara Nopper. Yes.
Yes. I mean, that really, I think, pretty succinctly summed up the long history that we've had of institutional Asian racism, and the sort of sociological, I guess, racism that we have had. I don't know, to make that distinction is maybe silly, but that in many respects have allowed this to flourish without really anybody paying too much attention to what's going on. And so society has really done a poor job, I guess, of like of creating a context in which this type of scapegoating is in any way, well, I mean, up until very recently, it was encouraged.
Yes. I mean, it became normalized. I mean, you have the 1875 Page Act, followed by the Chinese Exclusion Act, followed by the Japanese internment during the 1940s. So anti-Asian systemic violence and racism against Asians has been normalized throughout the past century and a half. So this is all crescendoing as we speak. And then we come to last year when President Trump was calling this the Chinese flu, the Chinese virus. And instead of taking responsibility for the US's failure, the US government's failure to act precipitously and stem the virus, he just started pointing fingers. So again, a way to avoid responsibility and accountability. And many people fell for it. And especially in a time when people are feeling more desperate, they're feeling more hungry, they're seeing economic opportunities dwindle. What people who didn't have very much have even less now. And people are looking for a scapegoat, because that's what we're taught in the United States, is not to look to the political leadership to say, why haven't you done more for me? It's, these people have taken our jobs. These people have brought the virus. These people are responsible for fill in the blank with the societal ill of the moment.
You mentioned how basically incarcerating people and locking people up, it doesn't stop these horrific events from happening, right? But there is that kind of thirst for retribution, and that's really what drives all of this, even if it's not effective. And so people will convince themselves that incarceration is effective in order to kind of fill that base need, I guess. It's not a need, but this desire. And it occurs to me that the dynamic that we're seeing with this anti-Asian hate, these crimes, has also to do with this incredibly misguided desire for retribution based on what individuals are experiencing societally, right?
Yes.
How do you extract that bloodthirsty, I guess, or punitive desire from society when I feel like it's just so embedded in the United States as this incarceral state?
Well, I think first of all, it's to pose questions that are broader, because right now what we are taught, at least when something bad happens, is, do you want policing in prison and punishment for the person who's done wrong, or do you want nothing? And I've actually been doing a series of interviews with people who have been victims of crime, not necessarily victims of hate crime, but victims of violent crimes. And again, they say, even after they've been sexually assaulted or victims of domestic violence, that what they want is that they don't want necessarily that person to be locked away forever. They want accountability. They want them to take responsibility. But what they're presented with is, go to the police, file a report, maybe they'll be prosecuted, maybe they'll go to prison, or you get nothing. So the question could be, how do you want this person to take responsibility for their actions and be accountable to you? So in the case of, there was a video that was circulating this morning of a young man who had attacked an elderly Asian woman on the street in San Francisco. So she actually fought back and sent him to the hospital, but she also suffered swollen eyes, and it looked like she was bruised all over. So perhaps being accountable might be, you have to pay for her medical bills. You know, if she can't see out of her eye and needs to go to whatever, and I'm not a doctor, whatever medical treatment has to happen so that she can regain use of that eye. And in the meantime, if she has to have a home aide that helps her do all of her daily tasks, then you pay for that. You're responsible for these things. Also, maybe you need to go to an anger management class so you don't go around attacking old women on the street. What we're seeing is that we live in a nation, and San Francisco is a place where there are a lot of police, that the presence of police and the threat of prison did not stop this young man from seeing an elderly Asian woman and just randomly deciding to punch her in the eye. So the threat of punishment is not a very good deterrent, because I mean, if you think about the three of us, none of us are going outside and punching random people when we've quote unquote had a bad day. None of us are driving across someplace and gunning down 8 random people because we've quote unquote had a bad day. And this is not because, I'm assuming this is not because any of us are like, oh, we don't want to go to prison, and that is why we restrain ourselves from behaving in such egregious, violent behavior, it's because we actually say, no, this is actually just not what we do.
I mean, I think certainly in that instance, and I want to move into just talk a little bit about the book to the extent that, and I think we need to have you back once it's out. But and one of the things that you tackle in the book sort of head on is this notion. One of the myths I think that you address is that if we just say we're going to release all the nonviolent offenders of our drug laws, and we decriminalize, which I think is something that I think probably the numbers bear out that majority of people in this country would like to do. And that is not going to end. One of the myths that are out there is that will more or less end our mass incarceration system. And in fact, that we have a lot of violent offenders in prison, and that this must be, the point being that this must be addressed. How do you address that? Because I think that for a lot of people, when they conceive of the idea of eliminating, let's say, prisons, or, abolishing incarceration, that they're concerned about that, that the violent offenders. And it may be the case that, that, obviously we're not committing violent attacks because we're afraid of going to prison. But that's not the same as saying, most people who commit violent acts, they're not looking to get caught. They also don't just say, oh, I'm not worried about prison. I'll walk right into the police, and here, I did it and cuff me. They don't want to go to prison. So how do you replace the function of protecting people who are afraid of that those people who committed a violent act are going to do it again?
Yes. Well, I think first of all, we need to look at addressing root causes. Why did the person do what they did? And the way that our criminal justice system and our court system is set up now is that from the moment they are identified or apprehended, people who are accused of committing any sort of crime, but let's talk about violence, let's talk about assault. They are conditioned to say, I didn't do it. So just to deny, instead of saying, it actually wasn't right that I beat that person up, or I robbed that person with a gun, or, and they are never pushed to reflect on the harms that they've done. Because if you think about it, there's a ripple effect every time somebody experiences violence. I'm sure the grandmother in San Francisco that I just mentioned, the next time she tries to go outside, she will probably be much more paranoid because all she was doing was standing on a corner waiting for the light to change. She was not engaged in an argument. There was no warning. So it makes people more fearful. But the person who has committed that harm never gets to hear that and is not pushed to think about that kind of harm that they've done to the other person. And the people around them often just side with them. So we have this idea that you side blindly with your friends or your loved ones. And they say, oh, no, he couldn't have done that. Or, oh, but maybe if he did that, it's because X, Y, or Z. And not saying, hey, Sam, you really should not have gone and punched that lady in the eye. Like, what is the matter with you? No, let's talk about this. Let's figure out why, you did that. And then what can you do to make it better? And part of this too is also we have to look at, what are the conditions that allowed this, and what are the other people in a neighborhood or community doing to stop this? I want to bring up one quick example, which is in Orange County, California. An Asian family moved in to the area, into a predominantly white area, and they immediately started getting a lot of harassment from the local kids, starting from ages 10 up to, whatever teenagers are. And, they call the police. That didn't help because the kids would throw rocks at their windows, ride up to their house, ring their doorbells at all hours. And finally, the white neighbors said, enough is enough. And they put out a call for people to basically hang out outside this family's house between the hours of 8 p.m. and around midnight to act as a deterrent, to be like, these people are not by themselves. You cannot terrorize them. At one point, they took videos of the children that were harassing them and they posted them on a Facebook page. And this resulted in 2 of the teenagers perhaps being told by their parents to come and apologize. The third teenager, their parents threatened to sue. So I think it's also like looking at what are some of the root causes of this. So some of the root causes are probably that 10-year-old and those teenagers heard their parents grumbling about this Asian family that moved in.
Right.
They thought that it was okay to go throw rocks at this family's house and ring their doorbells and terrorize their 5-year-old and their 8-year-old. And then you saw that the community stepped in and basically sent a message to the rest of the neighborhood. No, this is not okay. And we are going to sit here non-violently, nobody was picking up guns and threatening to shoot teenagers, but to say, no, this is not okay. And we're going to be here to ensure their safety and also to ensure it doesn't escalate from rock throwing to something more dangerous and perhaps more fatal.
Well, we will have you back to talk about the book more at length, but it's interesting to hear this perspective right now as people are trying to sort of figure out how we address this. And clearly there are some who are going to suggest, we find a big oak tree and a rope, but society has to, I think, start with a certain amount of awareness as what's going on and then act upon that. The book is coming out April 6th, Prisons Make Us Safer, and 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration. Very interesting stuff. Victoria Law, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. And thank you so much for covering these important issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, do we have Jules? Let's bring Jules Evans in. He is a philosopher and author of Philosophy for Life and Art of Losing Control and other books. And he has written a piece entitled Conspirituality. We will link to this. Jules Evans, welcome to the program.
Hi, Sam. Nice to see you.
And I'm here with Emma Vigeland. And we have been talking obviously about QAnon and conspiracy theorists. I don't want to say nonstop, but fairly consistently over the past several years. It recently, we've gotten feedback from our audience members and subsequently we've seen this sort of reported a little bit more that there are pockets of communities, or there's communities where this conspiracy theories have sort of run amok, and that is in the people have referred to it as the wellness community, or like sort of I've gotten emails from people like, I run a yoga studio and all the people I deal with, and there's a lot to that. And I want to break that down because, the perception is, oh, well, these are liberal, left-wing, progressive type people that go to yoga and this and that, which is obviously not necessarily the case either. But you address all of this in your piece. So let's just start with this notion of like, what is conspirituality?
It was a term coined by 2 anthropologists about a decade ago for the overlap between spirituality and conspiracy culture. And they, and subsequently I and others, have tried to figure out, why are people in New Age spirituality prone to conspiracy theories? Why is there this overlap? And there are various possible reasons. Perhaps some reasons to do with people's personalities, perhaps some structural reasons about New Age spirituality, its lack of institutions, its lack of authority. And now there's historical reasons as well, with the pandemic, everyone just being stuck at home online. Until recently, we had a president giving his support from the White House and legitimacy to conspiracy theories. So there are these kind of factors which have led to conspirituality spiking in the last 12 months. I wasn't really aware of it until a year ago, when I noticed leading figures in my culture. I mean, I'm in New Age culture. In the first month of the pandemic, posting things about COVID is fake, This is all like, you know, the documentary Plandemic, that this was all planned by the New World Order, and then QAnon stuff as well. And I was dismayed by this. So I haven't really covered conspiracy theories before. I started just following this and going, what's going on with my community? Why is my community making this crisis worse rather than better?
Let's help us and define maybe what your community is and what spirituality is. I mean, but I want people to keep in mind these three factors. One is sort of like the individual psychology, the structures within these communities, and the sort of context that we're living in that can heighten there's a lot of stuff that we have no control over. And in many respects, a conspiracy theory is a way of regaining control. So,
exactly.
All right, well, but tell us, just give us some definitions as like, well, who are we talking about here?
New Age spirituality can be defined as people who are into spirituality, but don't necessarily identify with a particular religion. This is a demographic, could be called spiritual but not religious. Could be maybe 25% of Americans identify as spiritual but not religious. It overlaps with New Age culture, which is into things like the occult, shamanism, energy healing, psychedelics. And it's part of this bigger scene called wellness, which is basically about personal health. And that sometimes includes New Age stuff, alternative beliefs, but it's quite bigger than that. A lot of people might do yoga without believing in cosmic spirit or that kind of thing. So it's a big field. It's a big market as well. Millions of people now do yoga, meditate, might try psychedelics, are into alternative health. So it's a big field. In terms of the three factors that we discussed, there's the personality factors. People who are drawn to New Age spirituality, they are quite suspicious of authority and of mainstream truth. Suspicious, for example, of mainstream medicine, of big pharma. They might be suspicious of mainstream media. All of this makes them perhaps more prone to alternative beliefs and also to conspiracy beliefs. They may, we may also have a certain kind of mystical mindset, prone to a kind of mystical or mythical way of thinking, which sees kinds of hidden patterns and meanings in things beyond ordinary reality. This can make you prone to spirituality, mysticism. It can also make you prone to conspiracy theories, which is a kind of paranoid mysticism. Everything is connected, everything is one, but not connected in a good way, but in a kind of nefarious and diabolic way. So that's the kind of some of the personality factors. You could also say there can be a tendency to narcissism, both in people drawn to New Age spirituality. I am a special one. I am an empath. I am a light worker. I've seen the truth. I've seen through the veil. And to people drawn to conspiracy theories. I've seen through the illusion. I get the truth. I'm awakened. Everyone else is sheep. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that
Yes.
part. I mean, yes, from just an experiential level, because like, it's hard for me to imagine for me to be more skeptical of pharmaceuticals, and I've spent enough time with tort lawyers to hear just horrific things. So too with media, having spent enough time in media to understand, like, you know, a lot of that skepticism is very justified. But what is it that makes it like that is it, you know, and this, you know, gets into sort of like religiosity too, even though this has that sort of I guess the engine, but not so much the car, if you will, around it in terms of spirituality to religiosity. That it is in some respects I mean, I don't want this to sound, condescending or as a pejorative, but it is a mechanism in which, like religion on some level, to deal with marginity, or just, you know, this is a clearer, less, I don't want to say nuanced, but less complicated and contradictory path. Like there is a vein of truth that I can follow, that I don't have to be constantly questioning at each step I take. Is there an element of that? Because that seems to me like what conspiracies provide for people.
What are you suggesting, Sam? Are you saying that it's a kind of reaction to complexity of modernity?
Yes, maybe.
Well, I think that's true. All these kind of complex factors, and in a way, what religion and sometimes spirituality and sometimes conspiracy theories can do is give us a myth, a simple, satisfying myth. Some conspiracy theories come from fiction, like some religions and some cults come from fiction, like Scientology. The guy who invented it was writing sci-fi before. So we get very satisfied by myths, particularly myths of like, we're coming up to a big apocalypse, light versus dark, heroes versus villains, white hats versus black hats. This is extremely satisfying to our kind of minds, particularly in a very difficult, complex time. All humans need myths. You know, we all have kind of myths that we believe in rather irrationally. But I think it's the risk is when you get totally uncritically lost in a story, in a myth. And what's ironic about conspiracy theories sometimes is they are deeply skeptical of official narratives, won't believe it at all. You know, like nothing is as it appears, but deeply uncritical about their alternative narratives or alternative news sources. If David Icke says it, yeah, that's good enough for me. If Alex Jones says it, it's good enough for me. So there's an asynchronicity about their criticism and their skepticism. As you say, it's good to be skeptical and critical of mainstream truth sometimes, but you need to be equally critical and skeptical of your alternative beliefs and not just go off on a fantasy, you know.
Yeah, so I'm just fascinated by the skepticism of something like Big Pharma, as Sam mentioned, is healthy in my view, right? And that comes from a very good place. Where it's such a fine line, though, to moving towards the conspiracy theories that you mentioned. How does that line get crossed? What are some of the triggers that you've noticed in observing this? And how can, you know, I know people like this in my life. How can you prevent that shift from happening? I guess.
Yeah. Now, the second question is harder than the first.
Honestly, you don't even need to answer the second question because we may not have all the answers, but I'm just curious about what you've observed.
I think it is absolutely okay to have, you know, conspiracies about, for example, Big Pharma hid negative results about antidepressants. This is now been, you know, factually proven. So that's kind of a conspiracy. Not a theory, an actual conspiracy about, you know, powerful interests hiding the truth to the detriment of other people. Personally, I think if your conspiracy about nefarious goings on connects into a total theory of everything, and that one group is behind everything from, I don't know, from Jeffrey Epstein to JFK to chemtrails, you know, to Greta Thunberg or something. If it's a total theory, you are at risk of basically collapsing the messy complexity of reality into an over-consoling simplistic narrative. Sometimes you can, if you Google Great Awakening map, you can see this diagram a believer created with all these lines going everywhere that basically explains everything, the entire universe in one kind of conspiracy. And I think some people need that map. It's partly what attracted people to Marxism in the 1930s, a total theory, likewise fascism. So that should be a red flag. If your theory, everything connects together. So yeah, you know, like be open to the messiness of reality, I would say. How do you protect loved ones if you feel that getting drawn into this? I think isolation has made it really worse in the last 12 months. So, you know, connecting with people in a non-stigmatizing way, trying to get them to enjoy other aspects of life rather than being sucked into this obsession over one thing over and over.
I think that's a very good point.
And people who came out of the cult in general in de-radicalization, ex-members of cults are the most persuasive people because they know from the inside all the discrepancies and incoherencies, all the times, for example, that QAnon made a prediction that didn't come true. So they can speak much more to the inner doubts that actually cult members will have.
Jules, I want to get back to, you know, we had those three contexts, and I think everybody understands sort of like historically, like I think the isolation, there's no doubt in my mind that Q provided for a lot of people sort of a surrogate socialization that they lost during the pandemic. I mean, everybody, you know, so many groups and so many connections sort of dissipated during there or went into sort of like, you know, hiatus, and this sort of filled that gap. But the structure of or the lack of structure of the spiritual world, and you touched on, I mean, from a psychological standpoint, the narcissism, like I have the truth, this is going to do it. But there's also like a quality of mesmerism and like entrepreneurialism in 100%. This that provides like a whole set of incentive structures for people to sort of, I mean, I don't know that people are insincere about it, but like, if I have a yoga studio and you know, I start getting into this and I realize like, you know, I could get my yoga people are going to show up because I'm going to talk a little yoga, I'm going to talk a little bit Q or whatever it is. Like, but talk about that dynamic.
Sure. So New Age spirituality is defined by its lack of institutions. It's deinstitutionalized. It's a kind of flat. Someone compared the New Age movement to like a bazaar or a fair. With, you know, it's very non-hierarchical, which means everyone in the New Age world is bidding for attention. We are competing for attention. Am I still here? Am I still online?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. There's no hierarchical structure. There's no papal kind of pope at the top or bishops. So it's just people relying on their charisma and their hustle and their grift. And influencers, you know, at the start of the pandemic, some of their revenue was shut down. Their yoga studios were shut down. Their retreats were shut down. So they're relying on their online hustle very much. And some of them noticed if they started dropping in conspiracy stuff, they got big, you know, feedback in terms of way more likes, way more attention. So some of them maybe kind of consciously decided to make a bit of a Faustian pact with conspiracy culture. I'm just gonna play with this a bit just for likes. As you say as well, there's also an entrepreneurial culture. A lot of leading conspiracy theorists rubbish mainstream medicine, rubbish public health, and sell their own supplements. Alex Jones makes millions from promoting supplements on InfoWars. That's his main source of revenue. I wrote a piece about another New Age influencer. He made a documentary called 5G Apocalypse. And at the same time, he launched a USB that you can buy for £300, $400, plug into your computer, and it creates a plasma force field of love, which protects you from 5G apocalypse. So you see what I mean?
You can get that from a USB drive?
Apparently you don't even have to plug it in. That's the brilliant thing about it.
That actually makes the most sense about it. You wouldn't think it would need electricity if it has that much power.
Well, we're talking about love here. You can't, you know.
How many of those units did he sell? Just out of curiosity.
It's quite popular.
Whoa.
So
I mean, I have to also say that when you describe that person, the charismatic person who sees an opportunity and starts, like, you could be talking about Tucker Carlson. You could be talking about Donald Trump. I mean, they all started to drop this stuff into their rhetoric and just sort of like, I mean, Donald Trump just the other day was saying on he had called into some television show and said, yeah, people should take the vaccine. Although I get the freedom aspect of why you wouldn't. I mean, that's not what you would anticipate someone who is like interested in public health to say, theoretically. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, this is one of the key historical factors is you had these kind of fringe conspiracies, but Trump's campaign right from the start targeted conspiracy culture. Roger Stone wooed Alex Jones and said, he's got millions of viewers who don't usually vote. We are going to target him. I don't know to what extent people like Roger Stone were involved in the construction of things like Pizzagate, but they certainly, people in the Trump team fed Pizzagate, and then Michael Flynn fed QAnon. And not only that, but the grift and the hustle is there in Trump's team as well. Like Steve Bannon raising money to build a wall. That's why he got prosecuted. Mike Flynn sells QAnon merchandise. So there's the kind of hustle there as well, the entrepreneurial aspect.
In your piece, you talk about geez, can you pronounce it for me?
Schizotypal?
Schizotypy. Yeah, or schizotypal, and that being a quality in a lot of people who are prone to conspiracy theories, or really people in this new age community that you identify with, and how that can be, I would say, a force for creativity in many ways, and also then it crosses a boundary. Can you define what that is and how that influences what you're discussing?
Okay. Well, as far as I understand it, it's a relatively new psychological concept, but it is a kind of a proneness to altered states of consciousness, a proneness to mythical thinking, to magical thinking, to seeing patterns, signs, connections. It's also a proneness to dissociation. All of these things can be useful for creativity. They can be useful for things like fiction. There's another personality trait called absorption, which is the capacity to be very absorbed by stories, by images, by symbols. Again, that's quite a good thing if you're a creative person. I suppose and so in a way that people that are drawn to New Age spirituality are often people who are open to these alternate states of consciousness. Now, I think one of the tragedies I feel about the last 12 months is I feel that Western culture, what we did historically in the Enlightenment was Western culture rejected alternate forms of consciousness, like dreams, trance states, mystical states of consciousness. And it said they're all delusional, they're all pathological. Only rational consciousness is normal and healthy. Everything else is delusional. I think that was, a mistake. I think a healthy culture is open to these different types of consciousness. What sadly has happened in the last 12 months has been a flooding back into the public sphere of these like mythical ways of thinking, of these like ecstatic ways of thinking, but in a pretty toxic, negative form, right? I mean, it's been kind of medieval, crazy, diabolic conspiracy theories coming back. I can imagine a healthy culture where we have a balance, where we're open to like the mythical, the mystical, but we balance it with the rational and the critical. At the moment, we have an unbalanced culture. Either we have very secular, critical, rational people, or we have Looney Tunes, mythical, mystical people. I would love there to be a balance between these two kinds of ways of thinking.
It is fascinating, though, that the polarization that we're seeing ideologically is also we're polarized on that level right now too, and it I think part of it is there is a fear of in any way feeding the sort of conspiracy machine by giving, if you give an inch, you've given a foot type of situation.
Tell me about it. I mean, I'm based in Europe usually, and there the EU has suddenly suspended the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And we're not sure why. There's no real evidence for it. And in Britain, we're going, what are you doing? You are going to fan the flames of all these, vaccine phobic people right at the moment that Europe is experiencing a third wave. But I think it is useful to kind of grant some ground, like QAnon, right? It's a kind of, there's satanic pedophile cult. And you can say, yes, look, pedophilia is a genuine problem. Child trafficking is a genuine problem. But you are making it worse if you try to solve it with some medieval theory of a kind of, satanic cabal. That is actually not going to help children. That's going to get in the way because it's so much smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always said that if Alex Jones didn't exist, the CIA would have invented him as a way of basically, throwing people off of the trail of, there's some pretty straightforward explanations as to why certain things exist. It's just that there's certain people who have aligned interests, and they just if you can throw people down a rabbit hole, it's probably better for those aligned interests.
It's true. I mean, I used to live in Russia, and in Russia, there is a concerted effort by the Kremlin to undermine any sense of what is true. So you can't really tell what is true. Like maybe there are aliens, maybe this, maybe that, who knows? And that kind of complete uncertainty about what is true is the perfect environment for authoritarian regimes to operate in.
It's fascinating and a little bit scary. Jules Evans, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Fascinating
Thanks
piece.
so much.
We will link to that at majority.fm.
Nice to talk to you guys.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back in just a moment. So there you have it.
That made me that just tickled my brain. I was like, that was such a good interview. He was so good.
It's a fascinating world, and very much of the moment. And we've referred to this book many times. He just
articulated it so succinctly. This exact dynamic that I think I've been struggling to put into words, and it was very gratifying to hear him say it so well.
Yeah, we will link to that piece, and you can check out that piece as well as some of his other writings. I just wanted to mention this one thing. We just got about a minute left. Oh yes, and Brendan just I am like we raised this so many times during this era. And it is an interview I did with Emily Ogden, and the author of this book called Conspirituality, which was about the history of mesmerism in this country. Mesmer was a guy, and there is a tradition in this country of sort of snake oil salesman types, and Donald Trump fit the bill quite a bit, and it has been enhanced because of the polarization that exists in our society. I think I don't know, different forces that have created the sense of misinformation and the continuing erosion of confidence in institutions, be it media, be it government, be it professions, whatever it is. And then this pandemic, which has sort of isolated people and made them very susceptible to it. It's a fairly toxic brew. We'll have more to talk about tomorrow. I wanted to touch on for a moment, we don't have any time, about the 20 senators who are meeting ostensibly to figure out how the Senate can work without a filibuster. I suspect they're going to fail, and this is part of the dance, but we will talk more about that tomorrow. See you then. And for those of you who
are sticking around,
yeah,
hello.
We got this came up during there, and I did feel like cat loving commie says next time a guest casually says that a grand theory is what drew people to both Marxism and Nazism, and so any grand theory should raise a red flag, maybe step in to mention that those ideologies are no way equivalent.
That was not what he was posturing.
I don't think that he said it in that way. It did raise my eyebrow. I think he was just talking about people respond at different times, and he said at different eras to philosophies or ideologies that have grand theories. He didn't even say the word Nazism, as far as I'm concerned.
He said fascism and Marxism.
But I don't think he said them. But I don't think he was necessarily.
He wasn't drawing equivalence between them. I don't think.
I didn't.
I think I wouldn't bring those two up because I think people will read the equivalence into it. I will just say that I think Marxism, like any sort of philosophy, is susceptible at different times to a type of fundamentalist approach to its adherents. I think understood properly, Marxism inoculates you against some of these types of ideas. But I'd say, there were criticisms of Marxists by, say, anti-imperialists in Africa that they knew everything because of what this German guy wrote. And so I would just say, most charitably, yes, that tendency does absolutely exist in Marxism, and it's been something Marxists have struggled against explicitly. But I understand why people would be sensitive to that, an equivalence being drawn there.
Yes, and I will also say that modern man IM'd me and said, you need to clip Jules saying modernity. I don't know if you could see it on my face, but as I was about to say it,
modernity,
I was like, oh shoot, I forgot that I never pronounced that word right, and how do I pronounce it? And I tried
identity.
To spell it out in my head, and I couldn't get there. So
I saw you laughing at me attempting to pronounce
No, well, that I was glad you did that. I was never going to be able to. I couldn't even come close to that.
Yeah. I attempted. I mean, didn't get there. But what was this again?
Schizotypal.
And lastly, a libertarian in recovery says, "Where can I buy my Majority Report Carpenter Pencils of Love?" We're going to get on that. We'll have a special version of the Majority Report Carpenter pencils that will cost $400. But it'll be worth it because of the plasma protection that it will offer you.
Those are pretty expensive from Union Shop. I've already checked with our guy.
That's the thing, is that Union developed plasma protection is super, super expensive. We could get the cheaper plasma protection.
But then you might not get protected from all that 5G.
It's just, first of all, it doesn't give you the same measure of protection. It's made, you have no idea how that's made. So we would just never, ever do that. That's why we would get we'll work on those Majority Report Carpenter pencils, the collector's edition with the plasma protection. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. One of the ways that we develop the plasma protection pencils is via support from our members. And you can be one of those. Join the Majority Report at jointhemajority.com. When you do, you get the free show, free commercials. You also support the free show, and you get the fun half. So check it out. Don't forget, amquickie.com, 7 minutes of headline news every morning. It's there before you wake up for most of you, unless you got kids. Well, I mean, I guess maybe, well, who's no one going to work early these days, right? I mean, people, maybe some people.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Isn't it awesome that 1 in 5 Americans now have at least one dose?
That's it. We're getting there. We're outstripping Europe, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And ladies and gentlemen, check out Nomi's show today, youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show, or twitch.tv, _Nomi Key _show. And joining the crew in the fun half today, old Matt. What's happening on Doomed, old Matt?
Oh boy, do we have a show for you tonight, Sam? That first of all, that was a great interview you just had.
Hey, wait a second. Didn't you do some stuff on Cuomo recently?
What came out at youtube.com/Matt Binder is a 2016 investigation that I did along with Blake Zeff. It's an old video, but it's not online anymore, so I just put it back up. It was an investigation we did. We went up to Hoosick Falls, New York, where there was a drinking water crisis. Their water was toxic, much like the situation in Flint, Michigan. And the community there wanted answers. And Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, who we all know is the perfect person to step in when there's any sort of events like that, when it comes to COVID or this scandal, obviously. And he tried to, hide it under, sweep it under the rug, hide what was going on, wouldn't give the community answers. They were drinking toxic water, and the issue is still not fixed. An investigation into the situation also found out that there are communities all over the state that are susceptible to this very same thing. And so we went up and we went to Hoosick Falls and spoke with some people there. And then we went to the New York State House to try to get a meeting with some state senators who were helping Cuomo sweep this under the rug, including the Republican, the head of the Republican senators there, who was helping Cuomo to get an idea of how progressive Cuomo is.
Right.
And so, we went there and I put it back up online because of everything that's going on. And I think people will really enjoy it. YouTube.com/Matt Binder.
And we'll put a link to that video in particular. All right. So what do you got going tonight on Doomed?
Tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time, speaking of conspiracy theories, there's been this gossip and rumor about Lauren Boebert's father, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's father. Have you seen this, Sam?
No.
Where apparently for years, Lauren Boebert's mom has claimed that Boebert's father is her apparently her alleged cousin, 80s pro wrestling legend Stan Lane of the Fabulous Ones and Midnight Express. And it's been going on.
This is literally made for you, Bender.
Hold on.
Exactly.
Wait, just slow down for a second. Her mother is claiming that Boebert's mother is claiming that her father, Boebert's father, is, so she doesn't know who her dad is, basically.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. All right.
And this has been on the internet for more than a decade before Boebert was even a figure on the national level. And my guest tonight, David Bixenspan, looked into the court documents, looked into the records. This has been an ongoing legal matter too. And he has found answers. And let me tell you, we will talk about it tonight. It's not as conspiratorial as you think.
Matt, what's happening on the Matt Leck Media universe?
Yeah, tonight, 8 Eastern, Left Reckoning YouTube. Big interview with Victor Puggi, who was with the Brazil Intercept when they broke the docks that sort of really upended the Lava Jato investigation. So check that out tonight, 8:00 p.m. We're excited about it. Had a good chat with Victor.
All right, folks. These guys will see you in the fun half, and I will see you tomorrow, which is Friday. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Hello, everybody. Emma, Matt, Brendan, how are you guys doing today?
I'm always eating in the break. I lose energy. Give me a second.
Oh, I forgot to mention to Sam why it was so important for me to do a wrestling show today on my live stream later tonight. Congratulations, guys, Emma, Matt, and Brendan. You know the big news today. Today is the day that WWE becomes your coworkers over at Peacock.
All right.
Really?
Yes, the WWE network joins Peacock today. So
you know, I finally downloaded Peacock, and not for Majority Report, but because they have the John Wick movies.
They have some decent movies on there, actually. I found.
Yeah, I've never seen any of the John Wick series, but everybody talks about it all the time. It completely passed me by. But yeah, free sign up, which was nice, but I also thought it's hilarious. It's almost worth it downloading that app just to look at how they market Majority Report, because the photo they use of Sam is very, very funny.
Well, that's how I get like my parents to watch. They don't really get the YouTube parts, so I mean, they never watch, but on occasions, say I have like a guest that I feel like they need to learn something from, since they don't listen to me in political debates as much. I figure I can passive aggressively turn them on to an idea by having an expert speak to them in one of our interviews.
Right. You guys got the same deal that Vince McMahon did, right? The 5-year, $1 billion guarantee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Just making sure. Okay. So what do you guys want to do first? You want to get to some sound? I mean, I got some sound, but maybe we should jump to the calls, because there's a lot of people already on the line.
Sure, I got some sound too.
Get settled, take a call. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so let's go to the first caller for the day. 570. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Matt and Emma. Matt, other Matt, MR crew. Thanks for taking my call. This is Dave from Scranton.
Hey, Dave from Scranton.
Dave.
What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, you know, I wish Sam debated Dan Bongino instead of Charlie Kirk at Politicon 2 years ago, because now, you know, Dan Bongino is on takeover for the Rush Limbaugh show. I guess he's going to continue the hate and the fake outrage on right-wing hate radio. But speaking of radio, my local news radio is finding a replacement host. One is a religious freak QAnon supporter. She won't come out and say it. And the other two are libertarians. And it's always funny when I ask, what kind of libertarian are you? They never have an answer. I always ask, I try to bring up, just read the Libertarian Party's policy and tell people how terrible it is, how anti-American it actually is, because libertarians about me and I, instead of we the people, a better union, the welfare of the people, and they never have an answer. It's just ridiculous. But I have a question: is when I try to call and I try to get my points in, it's just so incredibly hard to try to convince the listeners, try to get a point in. The host never wants to hear anything that goes against, any of their talking points, whether it comes to, systematic racism in the USA, which they say it doesn't exist. When it comes to voter fraud and voter ID, and we know these Republican policies go far beyond voter ID. Okay, you can't even use, student ID, military ID in some cases. We know how those voter poll purges kick off legal voters, mostly minorities because they have similar sounding surnames. Okay, well, it's trickle down economics. I mean, do you have any debate tactics on calling in, something like that? I mean, because it's really aggravating.
I got to bring up your first point. Did Sam have the option between Charlie Kirk and Dan Bongino?
Yes. Yeah, this is great memory, Dave. This was one of the choices, but this was before Dan Bongino even had a show on NRA TV. He was just coming up.
He was at NRA TV, but he was I remember this because it was no, who the hell is Bongino? And so that's what we basically told Politicon. Right. And then since Bongino's been basically juiced into every Facebooker's feed, and yeah, I think if Bongino wants to have that debate now, I'm sure Sam would be open to it.
Yeah, I don't know if Bongino wants to have that debate now.
Right. No, of course not.
He's sitting on a golden goose.
Yeah, Bongino. I mean, Sam could have hit the lotto if he had that damn Bongino clip. Instead, he's got, a clip with a guy who's currently alone in a studio doing who knows what.
Hated. He's actually hated in his own community.
Yeah, and honestly, Sam and Bongino have a lot of similarities. Between the two of them, they have 3 failed congressional campaigns.
Right. Kirk really,
Bongino ran
realize
3 times and lost. Anyway.
Yeah, right. But this conversation really has made me realize that Kirk really has fallen from grace, hasn't he? Turning Point USA is nothing compared to what they once were in the conservative sphere. He himself is no longer really a big, I could imagine if he started his show years ago, it'd be one of the biggest shows on the right. Now it's no one really even mentions his show.
He also just lost his think tank at Liberty University the other day.
There we go. Kirk is really struggling, and Dan Bongino is like a hockey stick if you were to graph it, just straight up to the moon. Success story.
Speaking of which, Kansas Owens is getting a massive a radio show down south, I think in Tennessee. So I guess so that's something to be on the lookout
Daily
for.
Wire.
Charlie Kirk, I guess he really hit the bottom, huh?
Yeah, guess so.
He's not doing too well. But to get to your question, I mean, the problem is that when you call into a show, they have the full reins over. They have the full control over your voice. I mean, if you say something or you go in a direction they don't want you to, to steal a quote from someone you all know, gotta jump. I mean, it's not saying that's what Sam does, but that's what they could do. They could
best advice.
I get it.
Yeah, write down bullet points. That's the best advice. And sub points for you.
Yeah, that's what I usually do, and that's pretty much how I do it.
You have to get your point in right off the bat, right as quickly as possible, as succinctly as possible, before they have an opportunity to see where the call is going. And then they'll be forced to either just avoid it, which will make them look silly, or actually address it, which maybe they can't.
Right. They usually can't, or they just simply ignore it. But I was quoting John Ehrlichman about the drug war. For one of the reasons why so many migrants come to the United States. Ehrlichman pretty much admitted to Hoppers back in the 90s that Nixon knew the drug war was phony. They did it to suppress, and undermine, civil rights movements, and hit anti-war protests. They pretty much said that they couldn't make being against the war illegal or being black illegal, so they came up with the drug war. And they just don't want to hear actual facts and history. It's quite aggravating. But thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
No problem.
So let's go to the next call, and then we'll get to a story. 256. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Jacob from Alabama.
Hey, Jacob from Alabama. What would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, I had a couple things. The first thing, though, I wanted to just add on to what that caller and what y'all were saying about, calling in to radio stations and right-wing hosts. I've got a really hard time knowing what I should be doing there, because I think some of y'all know that I've got a radio show down here on the weekends. We've basically bought some time on a right-wing station on Saturday mornings, and so because of that, the conservative host brings me on in the morning, and half the mornings I feel like, okay, maybe that was fine. Maybe I planted a couple seeds there, but the other half of the mornings, it's exactly like he said, like the host will just completely shut down anything that I say that's, or he'll, laugh and pretend like what I'm saying is absurd. And so, I struggle and I kind of go between, okay, is it worth it to maybe plant a couple seeds of doubt in the minds of the audience, or am I just allowing myself to be like a whipping boy and make the left look bad? Because, ultimately I want my appearances on that show to be a net positive for the left and for the labor movement here in Alabama. But, I don't know, sometimes I feel like it is and sometimes I feel like it isn't. It's really, really, it's really difficult because, like the caller said, and like y'all said, he's got the full kind of control of the conversation, and he can push it where he wants to go. And obviously he's the one proposing the topics. He's not often going to propose topics that he thinks will, reflect well on the left or the labor movement. He never asks me like, okay, what do unions do for safety in the workplace? Or like, what are wages, what are union wages compared to non-union wages? I try to throw those in, but that's never actually the real subject. It's that, I don't know what, I'm interested in y'all expanding on that and what you think about that, because I've just got a really hard time figuring out what I ought to be doing, if it's worth it to be a part of his show. I think that it's worth it to have my own show on that station, because I get to, I set the tone in those conversations. But I don't know, what are y'all's thoughts?
I think specifically, if you don't mind me taking this first,
No, go ahead.
Doing this for however many years now, I think going on this guy's show, if it's right before your show, I feel like that's only like subterfuge to like make people like turn off your show. However, I think in terms of generally,
it's not right before.
Do you mind just
It's
backing
not
away
right
from
before
your
my
phone
show.
a
My
little?
show's on Saturday mornings and his is on Thursday morning.
Okay.
Yeah, could you just back off your phone just a little bit? It's coming in a little hot, like it's breaking up.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, my show's on Saturday mornings, and I call into his show every Thursday morning.
I think it's just to sow doubt in the listeners of these shows, basically. Like, if you're calling into a conservative show, you should be illustrating to the listeners that the points they're listening to are basically bunk and don't hold any value. That's how I've always felt. Like, make them question why they're listening to it.
I would
Right.
I would have my tone be more inquisitive than declarative to ask them questions. I think it's probably safer ground that way, and I feel like guys like that don't often like that.
Yeah, I think it's I agree with what Brendan and Matt said. I do think it's worth doing those sorts of things though. It's if anything to challenge a different audience,
Right. And Matt, I think that's a good idea, being inquisitive. I asked a couple of questions today, probably for I don't know, like I often tend to be more declarative, and today I kind of asked a few questions, and that seemed to throw him off of his rocker. So I may try to lean more towards that potentially in the future.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Oh, and I just had a real quick
drop it quick.
Real quick thing. I wanted to add this to Emma. I'm in the labor movement here. I've been working with RWDSU, with Amazon in the unionization drive, and I've noticed some startling similarities between y'all's working environment there and what the Amazon folks are having to go through. Emma had her fingers sliced open by objects she was having to handle on the show. I noticed that Sam is really stifling free speech. He's putting a copyright on posit. There's that suffocating dress code. Emma's apparently getting these texts every morning having to match Sam. That's something that Bezos makes his employees do. They've all got to wear uniform.
Threats.
And not. Yeah. I mean, and one of the biggest parallels that I've seen is the not having breaks. I mean, you were just having to scarf down your lunch during this break, and sometimes, and this is something the boss loves to do, is they love to have these cute spins on things, and he calls sometimes, let's say, freebie Friday for when he takes away your break. And so I don't know, I'm kind of concerned about that. If y'all ever, I'm just saying, I know folks. That's all I'm saying.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I mean, that is the function of Freebie Friday.
Yes, it is. And yeah, I completely appreciate you speaking up for my rights. And eventually, once I get the courage, I'm going to expose him on a public platform.
Are you matching Sam on a regular basis? Is that true?
Well, it's been very accidental because Sam wears white and blue. And so, like, if I wear white or blue, there's a good chance it's going to match up. And
do you find yourself, sorry to interrupt, but I noticed actually this was a discussion in the Discord the other day. Do you find yourself all of a sudden using some of Sam's vocabulary?
Yes, it's freaking me out.
Yes,
I never used to use ums or ahs either. That's what's weird about it.
For me, it's I don't know if
not
he's still
never,
doing this.
but not never. And I have my own tics. I say like too much, right? Which is a lot of people my age do that. But now I'm gonna notice it. I feel like I'm saying ums and ahs more just because I'm around Sam.
Also, those tics are caused by wanting to maintain the speaking position in a conversation. So when conversations, it's really tough to get a word in edgewise. You subconsciously start doing ums, ahs, and likes a lot more often.
Right. For me, I find my ever since working with Sam, I feel like I say unbelievable all the time, and I say what else do I say? Oh,
stunning,
folks, stunning. That's another one. Yep.
Well, the other. I mean, now I'm picking up on all of arrows in their quiver. Another bite at the apple. Those are the ones I'm saying in my friends and family. I want to take another bite at the apple. God damn it.
Well, luckily those ones weren't in Sam's repertoire back when I was there. I don't think he ever said that back in the day. So luckily I'm not going around talking about arrows in my quiver. Oh boy.
He was talking about baked into the cake already. I think in probably your day, Binder. It's baked in.
Yes, I think that was the one. Yes.
Yeah, and it's just punctuated by just the fact that, again, I talk to him more than I talk to basically anybody during these quarantine days. Or, I mean, I walk to the office, I come here, I talk to him, I go home. I was like, I don't see basically anybody else. So.
Yeah, you're in a weird situation where like the one person you actually see in real life is Sam.
Is Sam. I know. It'll be great once you guys are all back in the office. Just a whole different dynamic. I've never experienced it. But anyway, can we get to some of these clips? Do you mind if I take the lead here, Binder? Because I just have
go for it.
I'm so glad this was shared because I'm obsessed with it. Not the most substantive one, but I don't really care. So John Oliver was on Jimmy Fallon's show, and the topic of Amazon and their unionization effort came up. That seemed to make Jimmy quite uncomfortable. Let's take a look at what unfolded.
Speak from your heart, Alexa, your rotten heart.
Oh my God. This is clearly not a commercial for this.
Oh, in which case, I've got another one. Alexa, how bad are Amazon working conditions?
Alexa, stop. Sure. Alexa, stop. Here we go. All right, I have to.
Alexa. No, Alexa. Alexa, what is union
No, Alexa,
busting?
this is me time now. Alexa, stop. Stop, please. Alexa, please listen to me.
Please, don't say anything negative about Amazon on my program. Advertisers advertise here.
So clearly they don't have a studio audience, right? So that lame laughter is the people who work on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Being afraid to upset Amazon, which
I think
is
they may
very
actually.
interesting.
I think they may have like a scattered 10 people with masks, and I don't watch late night, but I feel like I've seen images of that happening recently.
That if you're a normal person that isn't working on that show, and you felt like, ooh, don't say a bad thing about Amazon. That's such a weird thing to be like, ooh, about. Like Amazon, that's a good joke. That's what comedy should be for.
Yeah,
like,
that was great. I thought that was hilarious. Him asking Alexa that question. It was really well done. And I think, panicked reaction from Jimmy Fallon says something else entirely.
It's too bad Alexa didn't have any hair for Jimmy to tussle, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to know. I mean, I should have gone back and watched the actual segment. Unfortunately, I'm not watching, Jimmy Fallon these days. But how did he think that would go? First of all, like, why
having John Oliver on the show to do that segment?
Yeah, he has John Oliver might not be the most radical guy, whatever, but he has a reputation to uphold, and he's definitely going to come down on the right side of Amazon.
Yeah,
and like Jimmy Fallon should have seen that coming, and because if Oliver doesn't do that, that's embarrassing for him. So one of those guys has to get embarrassed then. If Jimmy Fallon decides, I guess he has to get secondhand embarrassed for Amazon, which is, I guess, you have to do when you get the NBC job, but.
Well, it just goes to show how, I mean, that's basically as edgy as it gets in those corporate comedy spaces, right? I mean, that's what was a good joke by John Oliver, but it's not like he said anything remotely controversial there, and how quickly that has to be shut down. I just find that fascinating, especially because the support for Amazon's, the workers' unionization effort in Alabama is very high. The president, who's no radical, has spoken out in favor of it. And this is not anything that should be controversial. And yet it has to be shut down immediately.
Yeah.
Because
Jimmy Fallon to the right of Biden on labor issues.
Yes. Liberal media. Awesome.
I'm going to throw this out here, not to defend anybody, but the show isn't live. It's taped. And if they didn't want it to air, they could have just not aired that segment. I'm not saying that's not Jimmy Fallon's actual real opinion, but I'm saying perhaps the writers wanted to get that in there, and Jimmy Fallon was playing the role of straight man in that sense.
It's not though, because he's done this a million times. Jimmy Fallon has done this.
Well, I'm not saying that he is, pro. He's on the side of what Oliver is saying, but I'm saying, they got that in there, and they could have their cake and eat it too. They could play both sides. Jimmy Fallon gets to defend Amazon with his uncomfortableness, and they get Oliver to say his pro-union segment of that whole piece, and they could put it up. And I feel like no matter what side you're on there, if you're pro-union or you're an anti-union conservative watching your fave Jimmy Fallon, you come away from that segment happy because it gave you both things. You know what I mean?
But Jimmy has been has made an effort and said and has complained that other late night show hosts are too political, and he doesn't like the pressure to be political. So this is, I think, in keeping with that. And this is a sports story, just bear with me, but it's relevant. Back when Russell Wilson was trying to get his contract, he went on Jimmy Fallon's show, and Jimmy posed the most planted question I've ever heard in my life. And he was like, everyone here is saying that, you're going to be the highest paid player in NFL history. Is that happening? No one was saying that at that time. And that just goes to show that, like, this guy says whatever is put in front of him and whatever the company line is. And there's a lot more people in media than you think. And that's why I found this clip amazing.
I mean, Jimmy's a company man. He's worked for NBC longer than just about anyone not named Colin Jost, who's literally worked at NBC since he got out of college.
I want to hear that reaction again, because, and I guess, like, to Binder's point, like, yeah, we have to see how many hard cuts there are in this segment, because if they did a whole Alexa segment, I mean, they should be, good on them for airing it. But, like, again, that reaction, the reaction in the studio is one of the lamest things I've heard. Can you just play it one more time, Brendan?
Speak from your heart, Alexa. Your rotten heart.
Oh my God. This is clearly not a commercial for this.
Oh, in which case, I've got another one. Alexa, how bad are Amazon working conditions?
Alexa, stop. Sure. Alexa, stop. Here we go. All right,
Alexa. Alexa, what is union
Alexa,
busting?
this is me time now. Alexa, stop. Stop, please. Yeah, okay. Alexa, please listen to me.
I mean, as if it was the most transgressive humor imaginable.
Right.
I can't put myself in those shoes.
Right. I will say, I think that's how a lot of in terms of the laughter, that's what the late night shows are doing now. They either have the people who work there in the audience scattered around to give some sort of ambiance to the jokes. Because I've also seen late night shows that don't do anything. I think Seth Meyers' show doesn't have anyone sitting out there. So he delivers a joke and just moves on. And that's also very awkward to hear silence after.
I mean, I think the people who do it best is Desus and Mero, but I guess they can kind of be their own.
Speaking of which, prayers up for Mero getting better from recovering from COVID-19. He's got COVID.
Oh, shit. I didn't hear that.
Damn. Was it bad, did he say?
He's still dealing with it. But I think he's all right.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't mean to start with the silliest one, but Bender, do you have any clips on your mind?
Yeah, let's go to this Tucker Carlson one. Where is it? Let's go to number 9. So Tucker Carlson is out there, and he's got some thoughts about immigration. I'm pretty sure you can guess what those thoughts are, but let's play this clip.
Reckless and destructive. What's happening on the border tonight will change this country forever. A lot of things won't. This will, and you should know that. Unlike other disasters, mass illegal immigration is permanent. No one ever really gets sent home. Over the past 30 years, the population of the United States has exploded by nearly 100 million people, mostly due to immigration. Were you even aware that that happened? You're not supposed to say a word about it, as every year the United States gets steadily more jammed with people, and at the same time more chaotic and less cohesive. As the open spaces shrink, as nature itself recedes in the face of yet another strip mall or apartment complex or fast food outlet to serve the new people. This is becoming a crowded country, and crowded countries are ugly, unhappy countries. Why are we letting that happen?
I mean, what is he talking about? Crowded country? I mean, we got 50 states here. This country is huge.
It's classic Nazi talk.
Yeah, it's demographically crowded.
Yeah.
Right. But, speaking to that, Tucker Carlson was just on earlier this month, worried about something that seems to go against his most recent concern about this overcrowded country. Brendan, could you play this clip?
So we spent the last year hearing about a health crisis, a pandemic, but there are a lot of health crises. This may be the biggest one. Falling testosterone levels, which have completely reshaped our society, and falling sperm counts, which may make it impossible to continue the human race.
Whoa, what?
Wait! I thought we were overcrowded. Oh, you just mean we're overcrowded with non-white people. We have too many people, right? Except not. There's not enough babies being born. Really, what the reality is that he's saying too many brown babies being born, not enough white babies being born.
Right. You know, he's able to, and at this point, I'm surprised Tucker even feels like he needs to use the whistle. I mean, everyone knows what he's saying. He's been saying it for geez, how many decades now? In fact, I mean, Sam Seder, back when he was on Air America, was mocking Tucker Carlson's style with his own little vest and bow tie. So, I mean, that's how long Tucker Carlson's been doing this. This is just the whole idea that there's some sort of crisis at the border is just another Republican talking point. And really, it speaks to a way where they can bring the cultural issue into policy, right? Because Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head aren't quite cutting it. What's the policy there? Where are they going to bring that into policy? But here, this is a cultural issue you could actually do something about in Congress.
Well, so, it dehumanizes migrants as well, too, because it basically reduces their humanity to an overcrowding, basically akin to a pollution population. And that is fascist, genocidal rhetoric. That is a step away from what we've been seeing. And also, an aside, he mentioned there's falling testosterone across the country. Is that a thing, guys? Like, have you... How has that been documented?
I think you would measure that just in aging populations, because as you age, your testosterone levels decrease.
So there are older boomers who have lost testosterone. So maybe like the general testosterone average is a little bit down based on older people.
I feel like you guys are even looking into this too much. I think it just fuels the whole soy boy narrative on the right. You know, the whole young people.
No, I know.
Being,
it's just he has no evidence for it.
Right.
Yeah, he has no evidence.
Well, I mean,
if there were any kind of, if there were any like drop in, like testosterone, it would probably be because of some pollution related, like Exxon thing or something. But
and you know what? Be ready for this one too. You're going to hear from all of these folks like Tucker Carlson, who completely denied there was a problem in this country with COVID and that the pandemic was some sort of overdone thing that, we shut down this country for nothing. Be ready for them all of a sudden to be real concerned about immigrants from Mexico or from Central America coming into this country and bringing COVID as if we don't already have it here. But this is what they're going to all of a sudden care about. I mean, you already do hear it, but it's really going to ramp up as obviously they continue to run with this whole migrant issue, and combined with the fact that the United States is vaccinating, starting to roll out broader vaccinations for its own people. Get ready for them to really be concerned about that. Well, also, by the way, not wanting to, send any of these surplus vaccines we have down to South America to help out,
Yeah, and I'd also say just one note is on refugees, is America has both a moral obligation to accept far more and a practical ability to accept far more than we have been. And that should be the position of anybody that has any kind of conscious and understanding of what this American foreign policy has been doing for like generations.
Yeah. All right. Tucker, man. Tucker Carlson.
He is like, just wow. Is there a worse guy in public life right now?
Honestly, I think he's probably the worst. I mean, only because he is he's growing in influence.
Yeah.
You could bring up Hannity, but Hannity is dying out. His popularity is nowhere near where it used to be. His time is coming up, whereas Tucker Carlson, I feel like he's just continuing to rise his show. I remember I saw a research that came out that basically tracked how cable news ratings have dropped since the beginning of February, when after the election, after there was obviously that big bump because of January 6th and the storming of the Capitol, after Trump left the limelight and Biden was inaugurated, all these cable news programs lost like double-digit percentage audience in their ratings, except for Tucker Carlson, who just lost like something like a percentage point or something like that. Just, he is the most popular figure in right-wing media right now, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, and it's dangerous too, because it's coded in issues that are more ubiquitous. Like, he's trending towards eco-fascism, where he can intertwine nativism and racism with like larger concerns that could be more appealing to apolitical people who understand what's going on in the environment and jobs. And it's a lot less straightforward hackery, which is what Hannity does, and it has the ability to bring a new generation in, which scares me at least.
Right. And speaking of Tucker Carlson, let's get to this too. Brendan, pull up number 10. So Tucker Carlson is on his show the same night he's talking about how migrants are filling up this country and there's no room for them because America's an overcrowded place. Really, really fanning the racial flames himself right there. Here's Tucker Carlson saying this about the mass shooting that occurred in Atlanta, leaving, I believe it was 8 people dead, 6 of whom were Asian.
So the guy's accused of murdering 8 people, and all the questions were about race. Okay. But notice, it's the politicians who jump in immediately to divide the country along racial lines. Vivek Ramaswamy has thought a lot about this. He's the author of the book Woke Inc., and he joins us tonight. Vivek, thanks so much for coming on. So you've been hearing this. This is such a sad story, a horrible story.
Press pause for a second. The idea that you would need on a guy who authored a book, Woke Inc., which I'm assuming by the title of it is obviously a book about cultural issues, right? The same bullshit with Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head. That's what he's bringing this guy on to talk about. Woke Inc., the whole wokeness thing has nothing to do with the idea of a mass shooter walking into 3 businesses in Atlanta and shooting Asian women mostly. I mean, the idea you'd have that guy on as the expert. Come on. Continue with the clip.
But it's part of a much bigger story we've been told for the past couple of weeks, that these very real attacks against Asian Americans are somehow a product of white supremacy. I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever to support that. In fact, I think it's kind of the opposite of the truth. Why do they keep telling us that?
Look, what happened today was really sad, and I think we have to recognize that a tragedy was a tragedy today. But that's a tragedy irrespective of the color of the skin of the perpetrator or the color of the skin of the victim. And you know what this reminds me of, actually, Tucker, is a few years ago, actually in 2016, there was the killing at Pulse nightclub, a different tragedy. It was an LGBTQ nightclub. Yeah. And initially, right after it happened, President Obama showed up on the scene and said this was an attack on the LGBT community. And in fact, then candidate President Trump actually said the same thing. Turns out in these situations, we have to wait for the facts to bear themselves out. That was an act of Islamic terrorism that was relatively random against the United States. He tried to attack a different club first and didn't even know that it was an LGBT club, any evidence suggests. So I think in cases like these, the facts actually matter. And I think it's shameful when identity politics obsessed politicians jump on this as a personal opportunity for themselves.
The facts do matter. They don't matter to you. Even if you take the cop's word at face value, we'll get to that clip in a second about that cop.
Yeah.
That this was, as the murderer suspect said, a result of his sex addiction. Perhaps he was going to massage parlors and receiving some sort of sex work, and this was his anger towards himself that was resulted in mass murder. Even if you take that at face value, it's already a racialized situation. It's already inherently racialized. The system of massage parlors and Asian sex workers. So it's embedded in the conversation no matter what. And they are divorcing the facts of the situation in order to, as Tucker always does, muddy waters and downplay white supremacy.
Let's get to that clip, because Fox News, it's not just Tucker. It's the whole damn channel is rolling and running with this. Let's play this clip from Fox and Friends. Sorry for just springing that on you.
It's just terrible. And he did, thank you very much, Carly. He did tell authorities that the attacks were an attempt to remove the temptation of his sex addiction.
Yeah, his parents are the one that turned him in, or it could have been so much worse as he was heading into Florida, as Carly was mentioning. But the big thing is, if you listen to that story, when it first came out, and we covered it here in the morning, and we said, oh, they said this could be related to some type of Asian hate crime, and it might be. But so far, there's no indication of that. And evidently, when this killer was interviewed, it's all about his being a sexual addiction. It doesn't seem to have any link, according to the police, to any type of hate crime, even though they haven't made formal charges yet. I'm just astounded that people are jumping to that scenario from the White House on down when the investigation is not revealing that. Do we have to create it?
They are taking the words of the murderer over the facts of the situation. That's exactly what's happening there. Can you imagine if a Muslim guy shot up 8 people in a different part of the, or in a different situation? Would they be taking his explanation of a sex addiction as the reason for why he did those atrocities at face value? It would be immediately, as the Pulse nightclub shooting was mentioned there, as they immediately jumped to the conclusion that he was connected with ISIS, right? Which I don't believe that wasn't true. He was sympathetic to that situation. But yeah, I mean, it's just infuriating.
Well, I mean, I just want to point out there's a local. Go ahead, Brendan.
I was just gonna say, look at the distance he covered to go to these different massage parlors, basically.
Right. I wonder why he went to Young's Asian Massage.
So far away.
Why that one. I mean,
yeah, over 30 miles away from where.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, the police are saying certain things that Fox News is going to keep to, but there's this from chosun.com, a reporter Wang Jiyun, and you know, this is translated. It'd be interesting to see this corroborated in a way that doesn't have to go through Google Translate. But Atlanta shooter tells me I'm going to kill all Asians. That's according to a surviving witness. So we're not hearing everything yet, and like often, like. I mean, I've seen stuff about like cops say certain things to make sure the feds don't come in and make it a Fed jurisdiction thing, right? Like, I think it's bullshit, and I think anybody in the media downplaying the hate element of that is doing a solid probably for cops, maybe. But
and I think it's probably a little bit too late to try to avoid the feds coming in. After,
I would hope so.
This, yeah. Let's Emma. There was a clip. Oh,
So
from the go ahead.
So. The cops held a press conference down in Georgia to ostensibly give the facts of the massacre of 8 people by a murderer. 6 of those 8 people were Asian. Fox News is continuing to try to downplay the racial element of this. And the cops, who are supposedly going to be a part of the investigation of this murderer and prosecution of him, are downplaying it in a different way.
The investigators, they interviewed him this morning, and they got that impression that yes, he understood the gravity of it, and he was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
Remorseful?
I'm not going to go to. I don't know if he was remorseful or not.
He's a pretty young guy with you.
A really bad day for him. Now, that cop, you'll be surprised to know, if we have this BuzzFeed article, may have shared similar racist views that would have allowed him to give this murderer the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, this is from a Facebook post, allegedly from a profile belonging to this police officer.
He says, love my shirt, get yours while they last. And it says COVID-19 on the shirt. imported virus from China. I don't know why it's spelled incorrectly, but
it's how Trump pronounces China. China.
Cool. So that's another way to connect the hatred and racism that Trump stowed to what we've been seeing. But as Matt brought up with that article, which I actually hadn't seen, one of the witnesses to the shooting said that the shooter expressed that he was explicitly targeting Asians. So anyway, this does smell like a hate crime, obviously, to anybody who's paying attention. But according to the cops there, it was just a bad day.
Play it again. Like, I don't know how you hire, the cop to go to speak to these people. If this is, who is this, a sheriff or whatever? But like, it's all poetry and like, play it again, because it's all like his metaphors. Listen close to the metaphors. The end of the rope is a particularly interesting one to use.
The investigators, they interviewed him this morning, and they got that impression that yes, he understood the gravity of it, and he was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
End of his rope is, Matt, that's such a good point. That's such a good point, because it's like, what other option did he have than to murder those 8 people and those Asian women who worked at these massage parlors? Like,
we're all really sick and tired of this pandemic. You have to understand, That's what I feel like. That's what he's like.
Also,
I totally get it. It's so.
He understood the gravity of the situation. What is that? What is how do you measure the gravity a situation has? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's like post-game press conference sports, like, jargon, honestly.
Right.
Yeah, we understood that this is a big game for us. The Bears were the Bears, whatever. Like it's like they're talking around the fact that 8 people lost their lives.
It's not even that they're talking around it. He's expressing sympathy for the fact that this guy snapped at the end of it. Like, he's like, listen, he's someone I can empathize with.
Listen, if he'd thrown in, we've all been there, done that, after everything that he just said, I mean, like, it totally would not have sounded out of place.
Yeah, we all have that. We all have that inclination sometimes, and he was just at the end of his rope.
Listen, if you saw someone who had a bad day taking out their frustration by punching in a wall, you would look at that person and still be like, well, that was weird. But apparently this guy going on a mass shooting rampage targeting Asian women specifically, it seems, that's just, it's what happens.
Yeah, it's even more disturbing to have it come from like a police sergeant or whatever, like a sheriff's deputy, where you're like, oh yeah, this guy who carries a gun all day is basically like thinking about the fact that, like, listen, I might just snap someday.
Now you guys totally understand where we were coming from over the summer with all those protests, I mean, that's really what.
And imagine how they treat sex workers that they catch in that area, right? Like, basically, he's trying to say, oh, he was at the end of his rope. Like, if they have that amount of a dehumanizing response to the victims, imagine how they treat busts of sex workers down in that area. It's probably with immense inhumanity and zero empathy at all.
I want to be careful here about that, actually, because, we don't know what kind of, what's going on.
No, I don't mean to imply that. I just mean they took his explanation at face value. This was his reasoning. Like, that's embedded in what they're discussing here.
But here's something. I just got to add this because Emma brought it up, and it's something I read from someone on Twitter who's a religious reporter, and it was a great point that I honestly didn't even think of. Apparently, this shooter came from a very religious evangelical background. And it's important to understand in that context she was talking about. I wish I had her name. It was a great post. I'll look for it after I drop this and someone else talks. But she brought up that you have to understand that within that background, sex addiction means a very different thing. We could literally just be talking about a guy who had relations outside of marriage, and they would call that sex addiction. Like, it's not what people think when they hear the term sex addiction.
Yeah, this guy isn't David Duchovny, right? Like, he felt guilt about, pretty basic sex probably, or sex, like maybe if he had some kind of relationship with a sex worker.
This whole thing is just, listen, Asian attacks on Asian Americans have gone up 150% over this past year. If you can think of anything that happened over the past year that would suddenly cause that to happen, I mean, obviously, Asian Americans have always faced racism in this country. This country has a long history of not just imposing their racist values on Asian Americans, but we also go over to Asian majority countries and impose our beliefs over there. I mean, the amount of pain we've caused the Asian community, is truly. I don't think people really have wrap their mind around the gravity of that situation, to put it that way. But the idea that this all happened in a vacuum, people are, and this is something that I saw some people go with, and it's just ridiculous. The idea that, you can't blame white supremacy on this. You can't blame that because, there's been attacks where people of, African-American people have attacked Asians and Hispanic people have attacked Asians. Well, yeah, sure. Okay. There is totally a problem all around of racism against Asian people, racism against all minority groups from other minority groups, but that's a completely separate conversation. We are talking about a white person who went on a mass shooting, not a black guy or a Hispanic guy or a Native American guy who just sucker punched somebody. We're talking about someone who went on a mass shooting, planned mass shooting, got in a car, drove 30 miles to another place to kill more Asian people. I mean, to bring that up, that completely separate conversation up now, I mean, it really shows where your priorities lie, right? It's not the situation at hand. It's the cap for the idea that white supremacy could possibly cover, I should say, for the idea that white supremacy could possibly have been what's behind a evangelical white man getting in his car, driving around, shooting people, and then having the wherewithal to say, oh, it was my sex addiction. I mean, he knows what he's doing. There's no laws in this country that'll give you a harsher sentence for doing a killing based on a sex addiction, but you'll certainly get a much harsher sentence if you did it based on race.
There's a documentary on Netflix on the Yorkshire Ripper, and the amazing thing about that case in the 70s in Yorkshire, England, is that the cops kept saying that the only women that were being targeted were prostitutes, they said. And so everybody assumed that, oh, we don't have to actually be afraid because it's just those women that are being targeted, right? But it turned out that actually the assumptions about the women that were being targeted, they weren't actually sex workers at all. They were just women who had to, I mean, a few of them were, but not all of them, right? And so I don't know, that sort of, you don't trust cops when they bring in sex work and that sort of thing. They're like Emma said, if they aren't treating them brutally, they're probably shaking them down in some sort of awful relationship there too. So I don't know. I think it's definitely a gross thing to hear him talk
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't trust any of what's going on here. There better be some sort of independent body getting their asses down to Atlanta to work on this. And then even then, I don't know how much I trust that unless there's someone who has experience. They should really be getting experts on non-law enforcement experts to guide this investigation with a federal agency here, because I don't trust it one bit. This is not good, I think, and it certainly doesn't look good for any future hate crimes that are going to occur targeting the Asian American community, which are certainly not going anywhere, sadly. We're seeing there was another video just yesterday of an elderly Asian woman, 76 years old, was attacked in San Francisco, and she actually fought her attacker back. And the video shows that her attacker, a white guy,
we talked about this in our interview in the first hour, in our first interview.
Right, he was the one taken away on a stretcher. But at the same time, there was an interview with her later on that says how she's basically right now blinded in one of her eyes. It's horrible. Let's go to the phone, because I think we all need a second here.
Yeah,
let's go to 818, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey guys, Dave from Jamaica. Matt, Brendan, Matt, Emma, how you guys doing?
Hey, Dave from Jamaica. What's up? What would you like to talk about today?
Well, I don't. Since you guys need a cleanser, I guess I'll change to a different type of topic. I was looking at the what do you call it now? The illusion that competition drives innovation, and your thoughts on that. Because, like, from my experience, at least, like when it comes to business, it seems in most cases I see innovation get stifled through competition because, like, R&D costs a lot of money, and companies find it easier to make money by buying out things and sitting on certain things than actually investing in R&D. Like, from my experience, lots of innovation that has happened through history has been more accidental in some cases or goal oriented. So, like, you give people a task to do and they figure out how to do it. It's not like through the magic of competition per se. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a capitalist myth that it's done through competition. Most innovation is done through massive R&D, which is often state subsidized. I mean, most in last century, like World War II and the space race, particularly, like the amount of fundamental breakthroughs that happened there that later got privatized for right, like who made GPS, right? It wasn't like these like I don't know I'm trying to think of a hypothetical companies that would have even done it, right? It was clearly military research. So yeah, like it's just a capitalist myth.
But it's one of the most stubborn myths because, like, as the previous early callers were
pretty
bringing
stubborn,
up,
right?
Well, it appeals
so
to people.
hard to jujitsu it.
Yeah, it appeals to people because we're mainly empowered as consumers, and so you basically like you want different things on the shelves, and that's where you see the innovation is in when you're browsing Amazon, you see a customer also bought and with a feature you never thought of, and I think it's basically playing on that. But as far as like actual any kind of fundamental research, like, I mean, look at anything important. Fracking wasn't private oil men just deciding. It was the State Department, right? And also our massive university system, which is hugely subsidized. So yeah, like, of course it's not capitalist.
Thanks for the call, Dave.
Thanks. I'll just drop off one thing.
Sure.
Matt and Brendan's advice was pretty good on folks who are trying to call in to conservative shows. But I guess if you want to stay on the line longer, as Matt said, just ask questions. You have to kind of jujitsu them. You have to kind of make them defeat themselves just by asking questions. Because, as you said, the moment they smell you're up to something, they're going to try and drop you off the call. Well, yeah, thanks, guys, for taking my call.
After having some time to think about it, I think another way to go about it is actually go along with them for a bit and then hit them with a Baba Booey and totally just drop all your points in really like rapid fire. Right, like a Baba Booey, just dropping all your points rapid fire so they can't even shut it off at that point. They're like, yeah, this is a great call. Anything else you like to say? Oh, yeah, actually, one more thing. And then just boom, blurt it all out. Thanks, Dave.
Baba Booey, Baba Booey. Later.
Let's go to another call here. 647. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 647.
Warren from Toronto. Can you guys hear me all right?
Hey, Warren from Toronto. Could hear you loud and clear. Sounds great. What would you like to talk about today?
Awesome. So first, I just want to thank you guys for your coverage of that Asian hate crime. I'm mixed, half Asian, and when you're half, I'm specifically like half Filipino, half like white, like 8th generation Canadian. You really start to see a lot of like the internalized hatred and just like white supremacy active and how people perceive you as white or as Asian. and even some of your mixed friends, a lot of their internalized hate for being Asian and how they reject that Asian half. So because a lot of just how people perceive Asians as just a model minority, and I find, I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing is intersectional, right? Like, and you guys talked about it, some of the approaches to people's perspective on sex work, the reason why we're seeing these insane reactions, but it's just so many different things, and it's just really nice to hear a lot of these perspectives you talked about. So at first, I just want to say I appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think you bring up, I don't know if you meant to bring up this point, but I think also a lot of times people forget about other Asian communities. Like you mentioned, you're Filipino. You know, we obviously have the people in China, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, and people, immigrants from those countries too, Japanese Americans. I think when people think of Asians, they think of people from just those three countries. But we also need to keep in mind Vietnamese, Thai, Filipino, the list goes on. And then we have to think of like Southeast Asian countries. I mean, there's just a lot of countries in Asia, a lot of people from Asian countries that I think there's hate crimes that target them that I think just get lost in the mix, as sad and unbelievable as that sounds. But thank you. I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, and no, absolutely, like you said, and just talk to anybody like me with grandparents who were U.S. nationals when they fought in World War II and then got denied their benefits. So that's definitely something that happened to my family. The first reason why I called in essentially was it's especially because Matt, you have so much expertise on this and kind of just the right wing pockets online in those communities. I was curious, for when you do your research and you kind of do your deep dives, which I'm sure must be very interesting, how do you see it from an international perspective? Because one of the most bizarre things that I experienced, my family, and I'm around Toronto, my family in Australia experienced, is right after the Capitol attack, there were like Trump protests, like all over the greater Toronto area. There were Trump protests in Melbourne, a fair amount of people. I've even seen random anti-mask rallies just walking around the city, and it's people, it's not Trump related per se, but it's people wearing MAGA hats. And that is just, and hopefully it's something that goes down now that Trump is off Twitter. But it's just something that kind of perplexes me, is just how this online reach, and I'm wondering if it's something we see propagate in a lot of these, alt-right online communities.
Right. It's interesting, when we talk so much about, how the left has to become more, international. Unfortunately, a group of people did become very internationalized, and it's the right-wing conspiracy theorists. This is really, I don't want to say a new phenomena, but it's something that became very popular thanks to QAnon. And that I will say this, what was different about it is that very rarely have I ever seen this sort of thing happen with a conspiracy so entrenched in American politics specifically, get brought into other countries. And while they do all have their own versions that go after their own politicians, it all still at its core is about Donald Trump being the worldwide global hero, bringing down the child pedophile rings. And it's nuts. It's nuts. It is nuts. And you brought up some great examples. In fact, Japan's QAnon community is probably one of its biggest. It is very big in Japan. I don't know exactly what to do about this at this point. I don't know if it's going to die out in the sense that where everyone thinks these people will just stop. I really think we have an entire group of people around the world who will be like this forever. When we talk about it dying out, I mean, literally we'll have to wait for these people to die out. Maybe at the very best we can hope for is new people, the new converts to these conspiratorial beliefs will be less and less. And then eventually it will maybe not be die out completely, but dissipate. There are just too many people all over the world who believe in this stuff now. I don't know if there is an answer where we can ever get to a point where I could give you an answer that says we'll get to a point where it's gone. It's rough, man. It's hard to see. It's hard to see. And you know, you see it online right now too. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a video that went viral the other day. Joe Biden was walking on the outside the White House on the South Lawn to get into a plane, and he went over to a gaggle of reporters who were shouting questions, and he went to answer one of their questions, and he reached over, and in the video, his hand appears in front of one of the boom mics that reporters have out there. And this one moment from this no longer than like a 1.5-minute clip has sprung a whole conspiracy online within these groups that are claiming that Joe Biden wasn't really there. It was all shot on a green screen. This is more proof that Joe Biden is either A, extremely sick, B, extremely dead, and this is a body double, or C, Joe Biden's not really at the White House because he, in fact, is not actually the president of the United States. Pick A, B, or C. It all feeds into one of the many conspiracies they already believe that fit into the QAnon tentacles. But this thing has gone super viral. It's got, I think the original video from like Bloomberg News has like close to 500,000 views. And this is literally a video of Joe Biden answering a question from reporters that's no longer than like a minute. That does not get 500,000 views usually. The Hills version of it on Twitter has got like 1 million+ views. And again, this is all people spreading this stuff, believing that he was behind a green screen. It was a trick of the eye, an optical illusion. If you look at other angles from other cameras, you'll see that the mic that his hand passes in front of was actually not directly in front of him. It just looked that way from the angle. It's to his side, which means from that original camera angle, it looks like he can he could pass in front of it. It's just ridiculous. It's, you know, and you can't explain otherwise. I have tons of people in my replies because I wrote a piece debunking it. I have tons of people in my replies saying, you expect me to believe you under my own eye instead of my own eyes. I mean, it's just, you cannot talk sense into some of these people, and that's just how it's going to be. You're not going to pull them out. And this is something really light too. Joe Biden in front of a green screen. Now imagine thinking that, you know, children are being trafficked by a global satanic group of cannibals who eat babies to get adrenochrome out of them so they maintain young, who are really people who run Hollywood and the Democratic Party. I mean, you think you could get through to the green screen people, but no, it all ties in together, you know? Did that answer anything that I said? I'm sorry if it didn't. Anything that you said, I should say. Oh, he dropped out, it looks like.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I didn't know if we had a clip for this. So yeah, never mind.
Oh, the Biden thing?
I didn't. Yeah, no. It's all good.
You haven't seen it?
I have. Well, I've seen screen grabs of people, you know, trying to point out the green screen part.
It sucks that people actually believe this stuff because it's funny in its own like fanciful way and obviously not true. But like when it's lent credence, you're like, my God, man, what is up?
Yeah. I mean, you really would think like, you know, this is a lighter conspiracy. Like you can't pull the eye, like you can't, how are you going to prove the secret pedophile ring that Trump is trying to defeat, that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, can't even take down? I mean, you're not gonna get through those people, but Biden in front of a green screen when there's literally multiple videos, multiple photos from various different outlets, reporters on the ground who were there. I mean, the guy who was holding the boom mic that has fueled the conspiracy, he's a Voice for America reporter. He's come out to try to debunk all this. You've had people who actually recreated the situation to show how the trick of the eye works with the multiple camera angles. I mean, I don't know what else you can do for such a light conspiracy. Like what is the answer to that one? Like, okay, Joe Biden is in front of a green screen. Why though? Why? Because he's okay. The death one. Okay, so what's the broader thing here though?
There's no upshot. Like I think the point is like, I honestly think you treat him like, look at all the fake Melania stuff that was going on when Trump was in office, right? Like, I mean, I even retweeted some of those because it is funny, but I don't think they were actually hiring fake Melanias. And even if they were, and the point, and this is the true thing about the green screen thing too, even if they were, so fucking what? What does it mean? It means nothing.
Right. Well, it just validates people's, you know, existing hatred of somebody.
Yeah, but I mean, is that what?
Here, here's the clip. Brendan's
No,
playing
it's
the clip. So-
it's not worth anything.
So if you're listening on the podcast, Biden's walking over to reporters. He starts to talk, and his hand goes over the microphone there. I mean, I admit it, and in the piece I wrote too, it does, from that angle, it does look odd. It's a bizarre looking thing. But if you look at other camera angles and see where the mics are in terms of perspective, and you can, it then makes sense. Like it's a trick played by how big that microphone actually is compared to the other microphones. It's a lot bigger, and it's not directly next to them. If you see the other photos, it's off to Biden's side. And then on top of that,
oh, is that what people are getting it in about?
It
Is that
it
he
does
doesn't
look
look
super weird.
He looks like he doesn't touch the mic. Ah, I see.
like he's right there. See, he's right over the microphone there. Yeah. It looks odd, but when you see the other camera angles and the photos, it makes 100% sense as to how that happened. It's a trick. Like, you could look what Hollywood does knowingly with playing with lighting and different
Tom
camera
Cruise's
effects.
height. Tom Cruise's height.
And none of this requires green screen. None of this requires CGI or digitally altered editing. It's literally just how lighting and perspective and focus works through the lens of a camera. And you're able to do all sorts of things, sometimes accidentally, due to those things. And it's just that simple. That's what happened here. It's just so crazy, man.
Was Biden wearing a gold or a blue suit to you in that last video?
He was actually wearing a dress. You guys didn't notice?
white
You guys
dress,
didn't catch
yeah.
that? Yeah.
The feminization of America.
You know, like the thing
no
is,
testosterone.
there's actual things that are like lies that you could say this administration's been saying, and it's just this is, I don't know, it's very frustrating to me, like that this is like you're validating your hatred of Biden, okay, but like a dumbass hatred that has no major significance at all. Not like that him fudging parliamentary techniques to ease off the political pressure on certain members of Congress. Like, if you want to hate him for that. Don't hate him for this absolute trifling bullshit.
Right. And then there was another one where, this is a short one, where you know how they turned the White House fountain green for St. Patrick's Day? Well, in QAnon lore, green is a major color, which means go, which would be
it's a major color in colors.
Right.
It's not a primary color though.
Right.
It's a
yes,
secondary
thank
color.
you for that one too. But they saw photos of like the green fountain, and then obviously in some photos, thanks to lighting and the ways lighting works, it would reflect off of the White House, which made the White House look green too. And they saw this as the signal from Trump that things are about to go down. So that was another small little thing that happened yesterday. Not as big as the green screen one, but the stupid shit I come across, guys. You have no idea sometimes.
We need a guaranteed jobs program so bad in this country. For people to work, man. Conservation or something.
They have way too much fucking time on their hands.
I hate the whole thing of get a job. It's the worst, most like classist thing in the world. But I think when it comes to conspiracy theorists, I think there's a good argument for get a job, you know?
Mandatory employment for conspiracy theorists.
It reminds me of when I watched Floribama Shore, which I don't know if people are aware of. It's like
Matt,
Jersey Shore, but in Floribama. I don't know where exactly.
I have heard of it.
Pensacola, baby.
But
See,
so
I didn't even get that far into a reality TV wormhole. I appreciate it.
So I forget what this like main hothead's name is that always is flying off the handle. I can't remember what his name is, but anyway, he's got a tattoo on his pec, and with the like scan of my TV, it looked like it was floating oddly over his body in a way that I thought, like, did they CGI a tattoo on him? Because it honestly looked like it wasn't quite in the same spot and it was moving over him. And it's literally just, there's weird stuff with the way they compress video. and that's what all it was. Cause obviously like, he has an actual tattoo. They're not going in to place a tattoo on his bicep, spending that money. And I won't go into the toxicology report of me when I watch this show, but I'll just say, like, it's easy to see weird digital artifacts like that and think, what the fuck is going on? But you have to actually actively think, like, if Biden wasn't good enough to do it out there, they would have just propped him up like FDR style somewhere and done it there. Like, right?
But that's the greater, like, geez,
like, I like how Biden's
conspiracy theory that they're.
Can you pull that clip up one more time? You don't got to play it, but I just want to show the scenery and the setting and everything, and the distance Biden walks in this clip.
Yes, that's what I want to say.
If you know anything about how like shooting on a green screen works, you would need like a warehouse-sized set. I'm not saying they can't.
He's got all the money in the world.
Yeah, you're saying the U.S. government couldn't build the world's biggest green screen warehouse set, Matt? Come on.
But he's good enough. He's good enough to walk this entire distance, like, in this warehouse anyway. Like, that's.
Yeah, but maybe they just animated his head on. He is walking a little weird. I don't know, man.
Well, actually, they think he's walking sickly in this too. They think he's walking. He's like.
But he's walking.
Right.
Right, but they could not be his body.
For me,
what do you think it means that woman turned around in the back there? That was very suspicious. Brendan, rewind. Sorry, this is too spooky to really watch the woman in the left. What's going on there?
Well, there's another thing actually. If you keep it going, you guys are bringing up some funny stuff, but you would be.
I do. I am like I'm having like one of those, like nail on a chalkboard moments as I watch that mic though. Like it doesn't fit well. It doesn't fit well in my brain. It's making me uneasy.
Right, but if you fast forward to the end there, Brendan, another part of this conspiracy is that he's walking to that chopper. And in the audio, with the audio on, you could hear the choppers on, the helicopters on. But if you look, the helicopter blades aren't spinning.
Not moving, right?
Helicopters can't make noise unless their blades are spinning.
Right. That's
I didn't realize.
That's what they don't know. Yes, that's what. But that's one of the that's another thing that they're using to prove this was all.
That's
fake.
not the noise. The whoosh whoosh whoosh. The whirring noise is when the propeller spin.
Right.
That's the engine, guys.
Right. Well.
Yeah. You're just gonna start it up right when Biden gets in, like it's your Honda or something.
Well, here's another thing too. Like you brought up how, like, obviously the U.S. government has all the money in the world. They could rent out a huge warehouse-sized set. But that's another thing. Like these conspiracies never even make sense when it comes to that. Because another thing was, remember that big Oprah Winfrey interview with Harry and Meghan from a couple weekends back?
I watched it the other night. Very interesting.
In one of the clips, Oprah is sitting with her legs crossed, and her boot is creased in a way that makes it look like there's something under her boot. And the thing they ran with, I covered this too, I wrote a piece about this too. The thing QAnon ran with is something that they have been saying for years now, is that a bunch of these big celebrities have already been arrested for their crimes, and they're under house arrest, which is why they never leave their house. Nothing to do with the pandemic, obviously. And that's why they never leave their house. And they have they're all wearing ankle monitors. Oprah Winfrey was obviously wearing an ankle monitor underneath her boot. And that's why there's that huge bump underneath her boot, which was, again, just a crease in the material. So they believe that Bill Gates has the ability to put little tiny nanobot chips or whatever inside the vaccines. The technology is there for that, but we got to put this gigantic brick-like device on friggin' Oprah Winfrey's ankle. I mean, why wouldn't we just use one of those tiny microscopic chips to track Oprah?
Yeah. Can I just go back to the Biden one? I like the idea that they're going to go through all this work of making a giant, green screen soundstage. But I mean, if you're the guy editing that CGI, I mean, you're fucking fired, man. They went through all
dead.
that.
Yeah. The Clintons are gonna kill him like Vince Foster.
Like the one moment you should be watching when he gets close to your CGI reporters. Just take a little bit of extra care, guys. Come on.
Right. But here's the thing too. If they were to impose that over, and I'm an editor, I video edited. So if you were to superimpose the microphones over Biden, you would actually have had to gone through the extra work of rotoscoping the microphones out. Why would you do that if the microphones are already supposed to be like, he's not supposed to go over them? It doesn't make any sense.
Well,
like you have to do extra work to get that mistaken effect.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, you would.
I think we've approached this from every possible.
You know what it is though? Okay, well here it is. This is where you have to go now. It's they're taunting us with this stuff.
Yeah, that's the end goal, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
once you get there, that's the end of the road.
Right.
He spent an hour CGIing his arm to go weirdly over a mic in the hopes that people would catch it.
Just so that they could be, gaslit.
Right. Let's do this. Let's obviously film this rotoscoped green screen moment in there. And then when all the conspiracy theorists notice it, everyone else will call them crazy for actually figuring it out. Bah!
It's perfect.
Great job, CIA editor.
And we're doing our part. Good job.
CIA roto editor.
Oh my God.
Matt, how do you like engage with this in like a serious way all the time? My brain would be like pudding at this point.
Right. I mean, it's just know that people, even when there's the insane ones like this, there are people who, the people who believe this believe in the much more serious conspiracies, which then in turn ruin their relationships with their sons, their daughters, their family, their moms, their dads, and they are living a very sad, lonely life that affects everyone around them. And then you sort of feel like, then you sort of feel the weight of where this Biden green screen sort of fits in a more serious level. Like on its own, for sure, it's ridiculous and we could sort of laugh at it. But, on the broader level, just understand what else these people believe and what that's done to their lives and the lives of the people that love them, Yeah,
I just want to share some of these pictures so you can see in this corner here. Here's the mic. It's farther away into the side, like Bender was saying.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, it's not directly in front of him. And people also didn't understand from some of the comments I got, people didn't understand what a boom mic was either. Like they thought like a reporter was just holding it with their hands and that they were like, why would a mic just be floating there? You should look up what boom mics, like how they use boom mics, and they look like floating microphones because that's what they use in
kind of
movies.
what they are.
Yeah.
And the edges are fuzzy too. So it's like, it's such a, and it like the material outside of boom mic is susceptible to like looking a lot more malleable than another hard object, I guess, on film. I don't know.
Yeah, and like the size of it, if you don't know what a boom mic is, it doesn't make sense when Biden's hand goes in front of it. But if you know what a boom mic is, the giant fluffy thing that often you can see it in films, there'll be mistakes where you can see it in the very top of the not very often, but sometimes. Often if you look at IMDb, like goofs, there'll be a boom that dropped into the top of the shot, and that's
Shall we get to
new
some
ones
IMs?
are pretty small too.
Oh yeah, right. But they still use the big windscreens that that, especially
if you're outdoors.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, good on the.
You're a helicopter.
Yeah, good on the people who remembered all those details. Because if they were just like, oh, we're inside on a sound screen, you might not have think to bring your giant windsock. So.
Right. But that's another point. Brendan's brought up a great point too. Like, yeah, with the helicopter, those must be some pretty damn expensive mics to have picked up Biden, like with a helicopter and the wind and just, they're big, So let's go to some IMs, like Emma said. Let's see. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. I think this has to do with the interview that you guys did earlier. I'm selling Majority Report healing crystals now with extra healing. Ella Meno. Sam, it's true. Because of the pandemic, I get to go to my construction job whenever I want now, you schmuck. Wait, this is a good one. HR Data Monkey. What does Sam do with his free time on Thursdays?
He records Ring of Fire. It's not that fun of an answer.
Is he coming in right now, Emma? Do we have to wrap up, or we got a little bit of time?
No, we're not in studio this week together. So
okay.
We don't have to wrap up, but I'd be fine if we did.
No, well, let me read a few IMs and then that's it. No more phone calls. We're done with that. We'll read a few IMs and then that's the show.
I hope everyone enjoyed our green screen Zapruder breakdown for 20 minutes.
I had a lot of fun, actually.
I genuinely appreciated like the breakdown frame by frame from Binder and from you guys. It was helpful to understanding that.
Aaron from Ontario says Charlie Kirk's popularity is shrinking faster than his Photoshopped face in every Turning Point USA meme. You guys know what he's talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Turd Ferguson says, "Oh great, Vince McMahon gets another $1 billion. The wrestlers getting paid with exposure dollars." Right. Geez, people, a lot of IMs here. Disco Stew says the left seems to have a real weakness in the area of foreign policy. I heard a lot of minimizing of the Russia stuff, but how do we respond to the fact that Russian spies were advising the Trump campaign? Seems to me mocking it just shows a lack of seriousness. I know. I think, you know, there is a middle ground here. I do think that it is fair to point out that the Democratic Party and the more centrist factions on, and I don't want to say the left, but the liberals, the libs, the common liberal, really is obsessed with the Russia stuff to the point where everything is Russia's fault, and Trump and the Republican Party themselves bear very little, if any, responsibility. They were just puppets, and they had no agency of their own. I mean, that's not true. This is all, you know, the Republican Party is the foundation of all this. That's where it all comes from. But then, in the same sense, I do agree with what you're saying, that there is some leftists who sort of poo-poo when you bring up the Russian interference at all. And I think there's a way to actually talk about the facts while maintaining, you know, in that factual grounding, and without going off on a liberal conspiracy blueanon, if you will, of their own. You know what I mean? Like there's an actual truth to it that liberals take way too far and then turn it into their own sort of right-wing adjacent type conspiracy. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, broadly. I mean, I think I'm always, from the outset of the Russiagate stuff during the Trump administration, my interest was in, okay, let's see to the interest that this is true, because it not a shock to me. And also, let's see what, for instance, Israel Gate and Saudi Arabia Gate, and let's get all these other foreign influence. Let's talk about foreign influence in general. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think you pretty much answered it well.
Chris from Taiwan says, listening to Emma talk about sports has made me realize how normies must feel when they hear me talk about politics. I haven't heard Emma talk about sports enough, but I understand what you're talking about.
Okay, wait, read it again.
Oh, you missed it. I honestly
sorry,
didn't realize you weren't there. Oh, see, that's listening to Emma talk about sports, says Chris from Taiwan, has made me realize how normies must feel when they hear me talk about politics.
Yes. I look, I have both of those burdens of having a bit of an addictive personality to things like politics and sports, and it's sometimes people look at me funny at parties.
The Sporty Report with Emma Vigilant says, this is the username, by the way.
Vigilant. Vigland.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Sorry.
It's just shush. It's all good.
I was
why
actually,
I said shush.
I was actually watching a documentary on Netflix. I forgot which one. I'm going to have to look at my history to let you know. And one of the experts had your last name, but I think they pronounced it Vigilant, which is why I think I said it.
Well, it's like, it definitely is a hard G, but there's different pronunciations. I think it's like fairly rare, but there is a park in Norway that's Vigeland Park, so that's where it comes from.
I worked on a job with Jimmy Fallon. While I have no issues with him, I've heard from some others that have worked with him that he is an a-hole. Also, I don't think that NBC talent is unionized, but NBC crew absolutely is. NBC talent is unionized. Are you kidding me? You can't work on a network show and not be part of SAG-AFTRA. They are for sure unionized.
Sam's in SAG.
Yeah. Well, that's to work on the Majority Report. Brock from VA. It's not the same, but NBC show Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt had a whole episode where someone's boyfriend was a dumb, lazy union worker who got the day off because it was his cat's birthday or something absurd like that.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember that. That sucks.
I seem to remember workaholics having a good I mean, there were some things that were at the expense of unions in like there's a season 1 episode where they try to form a union, but I remember it being kind of funny and pretty well done.
I worked with the showrunner or one of the writers from Kimmy Schmidt, and that episode does not surprise me.
Really?
That plot line, yeah.
You know, when you see like anti-union stuff in shows or whatever, like keep in mind
in writers' rooms that are absolutely unionized.
Yeah, all these facets that come into all these different jobs that come into making these shows possible. With some exceptions, obviously, background actors not unionized, PAs are not unionized, but Directors Guild, Screenwriters Guild, SAG, all these everyone involved with actually writing the story, lighting, and acting it out. Yes, 100%. The main crew members, absolutely. These are all unionized groups, but I think it's worth focusing on directors, screenwriters, and actors, being that they're the ones who have the power creatively to actually say, isn't this weird to be shitting on unions while we're part of a union that protects us? Obviously the gaffers don't have any say in that.
Gaffers walk off for anti-union propaganda in the script.
Right. Maybe there's some really good gaffer out there that everyone wants who has some creative pull. I don't know. The Tim Caucus says, sounds to me like Tucker Carlson hates the suburbs, strip malls, fast food. If only it were true. Culturally Catholic asks, where's the 1 million YouTube plaque? Yeah, what's up with that? Did you guys get one yet?
It's here, and Sam wanted to unveil it, and he just keeps forgetting.
What? Gotta get on top of that.
I'll remind him when we're in the same place next.
Remind him next Thursday. And do it when I join in the very end of the first half.
I will. I've seen it. It's a beaut.
Oh, I bet it is. Ooh. Almost there though. YouTube.com/Matt Binder. Help me get to 1 million subs so I should get that plaque. Actually, first help me get to 100K so I get that first plaque. Bear at Home 2 says, all the anti-Sam talk today is stunning. Hopefully Sam doesn't implement the Jeff Bezos style union busting to the show.
No union to bust.
Right.
H-Dub says the Baba Booey method. Oh, the one I brought up about calling in those type of shows. The Baba Booey method is exactly how Chris James gets a Butch call in. Right. Trumpy Bear says Carlson's guest lied about the Pulse shooter knowing it was a gay bar. He visited the bar a few times before the shooting. Right. I remember hearing that. I totally forgot to mention that. You just reminded me. But I remember hearing he frequented the bar, and there was like talk about like this was an LGBT hate crime, and there was like speculation that it was because he was someone who was fighting with the fact that he himself may have very well been gay.
Gotta be quick, Binder. Gotta be quick.
I'm sorry. There's so many IMs. Just a few more here. Thomas from STL, agree with Old Matt's point about diversity in Asian experiences, which includes South Asia, India, Pakistan, etc. Right? Post 9/11 and Trump era, anti-South Asian violence has been a fixture of my life since 9/11. Coalition building with the Asian community and between marginalized groups is essential in defeating white supremacy. Me in Pillow Guy says, why does Emma continue to make jokes about short men when Old Matt is on the show? Emma, are you making jokes about short men?
When did I just make a about Tom Cruise?
Oh, I was right here too. Wow.
I've never met Matt in person, so I didn't realize. Again, I thought you were just based on your face. I thought you were tall. Sorry.
Let me tell you right here, right now, Emma, if we were in the same studio and you said that, I would get off of this milk carton I'm sitting on. And I would come over there and I would.
I really am sorry.
Ray, regarding the Biden clip, the sound is the gas turbine engine running without engaging the transmission that turns the rotor. Right. I mean, I didn't know all the specifics, but yes, I knew that it could work without you would hear that sound without the actual blades turning.
I'm pretty sure those things are push to start and you can just kind of get it and go.
Just spin it and then jump in, right? Before it flies off. You got to get in quick before it goes, you know? You guys, Tree Boy, you guys mentioned Bar Rescue last week, and sadly, I made the mistake of looking it up. I'm now addicted to this wonderful.
It is
mistake.
It is a wonderful program.
It's so mistake. It's the last great reality TV show.
Yeah, I'm not a big reality TV show fan, but Bar Rescue is so good. It's just so good.
He just knows what he's doing. That host, and I'm blanking on his name, but like what
Taffer.
Yeah, what a just like legend.
And when there's a shitty manager that like deserves it, he's the best person to put in front of him.
It is gratifying.
Also, from my own personal experience, I used to, back in the day, I used to book shows at venues, like punk shows and hardcore shows at venues. And you would be so shocked to understand, like it would baffle your mind if you knew how bad venue and bar owners are at running a venue or bar.
Amazing.
You literally cannot understand how bad, like I've never come across a good venue or bar owner. Like they're all so bad at it.
I mean, I haven't done only a few live shows. I can, to be honest, kind of see.
You get there and it's like, so what's up? They're like, I don't know, just do your thing.
Right. So to see that on screen every time I watch Bar Rescue and see some guy being able to actually put them in their place, it's fantastic to see.
Not the Bell House though. Those guys are great.
This is the final IM, Bender.
Final IM. The Supporting Report with Emma Vigeland with the final IM of the day. I'm not even in the union. As a freelance worker, I was treated and paid based on the union rates. Really wish my industry would unionize. Well, I wish every industry would unionize and take it a step further. Worker owned, right? Let's shoot for the stars.
Yeah. Hey, folks.
All right, everybody. Tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time, youtube.com/Matt Binder. Get all the gossip. It might as well be doomed with Jerry Springer tonight. Get all the gossip on Lauren Boebert's dad, pro wrestler Stan Lane, allegedly. And Matt, what time's Left Reckoning tonight?
8 Eastern.
Ooh, perfect. Little what was it that NBC used to have on Thursdays? Their comedy night or whatever with Seinfeld and Friends.
Right.
It's like leftist Thursday night, yeah.
Leftist Thursday.
All right, everybody. Rest of Majority Report crew will see you tomorrow. The Nomiki Show coming right up at the top of the hour on her YouTube channel. Take care.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.